Chapter 2509. Are you willing to let me die? 2. Uncle Long and the others looked like they were about to vomit. This guy was really strong. Their respect for him was like the waves of the river, endless. The demon gritted his teeth and glared at Mingzi for a long time, feeling helpless. Compared to this guy's shamelessness, his training was still not enough. Evildoer admitted that he had lost and turned to Lung Ruoxue for help. Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh when she saw the demon's pitiful expression. He didn't think that there would be someone he couldn't handle. Could this be considered as everything having its weakness? However, Lung Ruoxue couldn't just stand by and watch the demon be at his wit's end. So, after the demon cried for help, she immediately walked over and sized up Mingzi. For some reason, Mingzi, who had a calm expression on his face, felt goosebumps all over his body from Lung Ruoxue's probing gaze. His intuition told him that this woman was very dangerous. But in order not to lose in terms of momentum, he didn't show any nervousness on his face. After sizing him up for a while, Lung Ruoxue smiled and looked at Mingzi's hand. How should I address you? Mingzi, the city lord of Nine Pass City. Mingzi took the initiative to introduce himself while secretly guessing Lung Ruoxue's identity. Could this be the legendary future Nether Empress? Mu Li had only told a few of his lord's trusted subordinates that his lord had found him a wife, and Mingzi was one of them who knew the truth. Hence, he had heard about Lung Ruoxue a long time ago. He had also heard some things about the Netherworld Empress from the city lord of Muley City. However, no one had seen the Netherworld Empress' true appearance except for the city lord of Muley City. In the entire room, other than Ro Ji, there was only this devastatingly beautiful woman in front of him. It was also because of this that Mingzi easily associated Lung Ruoxue and the Netherworld Empress with them. However, being a cautious person, he didn't directly call out to them. Otherwise, if he made a mistake, he would be the one who would be embarrassed. Dark Swamp City Lord, the man you're hugging is my man. After knowing the other party's name, Lung Ruoxue nodded her head and said with a serious expression, He's my lord. Mingzi was stunned for a moment and quickly reacted. He was sweating and couldn't help but wonder what this person meant. However, when he heard Lung Ruoxue say that his master was her man, Mingzi finally confirmed Lung Ruoxue's identity as the Netherworld Empress. Instantly, his gaze towards Lung Ruoxue turned fiery. She was the future Netherworld Empress that he had long heard of. I finally saw one alive today. One must know that they had been looking forward to seeing the future Netherworld Empress for a long time. It was a pity that they never had the chance to see her. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, Mingzi really wanted to suggest taking a photo with Lung Ruoxue and signing an autograph as a memento. Your lord's first profession is my man, so quickly let go. No one is allowed to touch my man. Lung Ruoxue suddenly roared in a menacing manner. I'm not just anyone. Mingzi was not the least bit afraid of Lung Ruoxue's anger. Instead, he spoke with confidence. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue could not help but choke. This fellow was really indescribable. At this moment, the kind Uncle Long helped Lung Ruoxue out of her predicament. You're not just anyone, but you're also an outsider. Young man, the consequences of snatching my Shui heir's man are very miserable. You have to treasure your life. Uncle Long's words were sincere and earnest, but Lung Ruoxue and Mingzi broke out in cold sweat. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Today, she realized that Uncle Long's imagination was very strong. I treasure my life, and I have no intention of snatching a man from the Netherworld Queen. Don't worry. I like women, I'm not interested in men. Mingzi said seriously. Following that, he looked at Lung Ruoxue, then at his master. He steeled his heart and said, I can't bear to leave my lord, so am willing to try any method that can allow me to stay by my lord's side. If you don't let me hug his lord's thigh, how about hugging yours? Thanks, you're looking to die? Hearing this, the evildoer flew into a rage. Uncle Long and the others also looked at Mingzi sympathetically, as if he was looking for death. Unexpectedly, Mingzi still had a fearless expression and said, Well, see. The Netherworld Empress definitely won't let me hug her thigh, so the only person I can hug is his lord. Fine, he was still in the right. Lung Ruoxue was speechless and helpless. Towards Mingzi, she also felt a trace of power not following her heart. Lung Ruoxue gave the evildoer a look that said you're on your own and did not want to bother with this pair of loving master and subordinate. You'll go rest first. Out of sight, out of mind. Lung Ruoxue decided to leave first. Shuer! The demon called out pitifully as he watched Shuer's back view enter the room. However, Lung Ruoxue didn't even turn her head. Seeing that Shuer had left, Uncle Long and the others also left tactfully. The master of the Dark World's joke wasn't that good to watch. After everyone had left, the evildoer cast a barrier between him and Mingzi. Then he shouted with a dark face, "What the hell are you doing?" Although Mingzi's personality was a little strange, it was rare to see him like this today. Or it could be said that Mingzi almost did not dare to act like this in front of him. Therefore, Mingzi's behavior today was definitely abnormal. The city lord of Muley City told me to do so. He told me to report to the lord when no one was around. Mingzi, who was afraid of being beaten up, betrayed Mu Li without even blinking. Was he the one who asked you to act as the bottom? The demon gritted his teeth and secretly hated him. The city lord of Muley City asked me to use some extreme methods. There were so many people in the room just now, so I had no choice but to sacrifice my own appearance. Mingzi explained with an expression of, I don't want either. Damn it, did you just sacrifice your body? The demon glared at Mingzi and said viciously. He had scared everyone, making them think that there was an abnormal city lord in the 9th nether prison. Unusual times call for unusual measures. You're a magnanimous person, my lord, so you won't blame me, right? Mingzi said with a cheeky smile. Speak. Why did Mu Li send you here? Why didn't he come himself? The demon was too lazy to argue with this guy in front of him and went straight to the point. The city lord of Muley City was going to come, but he received news on his way here, so he changed his route and went to the Dead Sea. Before he left, he sent me a message and asked me to come here and see if the person who brought the deities to 9 nether prison was your highness. By the way, I came here with the Jihua city lord. Mingzi reported. Are there any movements on the other side of the Death Sea? The demon asked directly when he heard that Mu Li had gone to the Dead Sea. Not yet, Mingzi said honestly. Don't let Shuer know about the matters at the Death Sea. The demon nodded and warned. Yes. My lord, the Castellan of Jihua City. Mingzi was about to talk about the Castellan of Jihua City when he heard a loud bang behind him. He stood up immediately and saw the Castellan of Jihua City breaking in through the array formation with an aggressive look. Chapter 25:10. Are you willing to let me die? 3. This was definitely the rhythm of seeking death. The Jihua City lord entered the room and immediately yelled, Where are they? All of you, get out here. Hearing the roar, Lung Ruoxue and the rest walked out of the room. Who is this? Such a powerful aura? Seeing this, Uncle Long couldn't help but say, his resolute face full of ridicule. Are you the gods who came to the 9 nether prison? Nether Sword asked loudly when he saw Uncle Long and the others. That's right. For you. Uncle Long asked calmly. I'm the city lord of Jihua City. Nether Sword shouted as if he was afraid that no one could hear him. What brings you here, Lord of Jihua City? Lung Ruoxue asked calmly before finding a chair to sit down. Her voice immediately attracted Nether Sword's attention. The moment he saw Lung Ruoxue, Nether Sword was stunned. Was this a woman from the divine realm? She was indeed a rare beauty. I heard you captured my sister and nephew? Although the beauty in front of him had made him fall in love with her, Nether Sword was still a very rational person. He knew what was important, so he naturally had to deal with his sister and nephew first. Yes, they are indeed in our hands. Lung Ruoxue nodded and replied honestly. I want you to release them now. Hearing this, Nether Sword immediately made a request. On what basis? Who do you think you are? If I let her go just because you want me to, I'll lose face. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile that was not a smile. She was truly suspicious that this bitch in front of her was feeling too good about herself and thought too highly of herself. "I'm the Lord of Jihua City," Nether Sword shouted at the top of his voice. To be looked down upon by a beauty was absolutely a great humiliation that he could not bear. "So what? I'm not under your jurisdiction." Lung Ruoxue still looked as if she did not care. "Do you know where we are? If I tell the outside world that you gods have captured our people, do you think you can leave the Nether prison alive?" Nether Sword threatened with wide eyes. "I think you can try." Lung Ruoxue suddenly laughed. Instantly, it was like 100 flowers had bloomed, dazzling the eyes of everyone in the room. The demon who had been inside the array formation looked gloomy when he saw Xue Er's beautiful smile. However, he didn't come out of the array formation. He wanted to see what the famous Lord of Jihua City would do. Of course, he also blamed the Jihua City Lord for making Xue Er smile. Seeing this, Mingzi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and felt sorry for the Jihua City Lord. This person, if he wanted to die, he would choke to death even if he drank water. Now, he deeply felt that the Lord of Jihua City was such a person. Especially when he accidentally caught a glimpse of his master's sinister black eyes that were spewing fire, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. At this moment he was blocked by his lord in the barrier. He didn't even have the chance to signal Nether Sword with his eyes. However, even if he had the chance, he probably wouldn't do it. Thanks, damn it, it was already very loyal of him not to hit Nether Sword when he was down, and he still wanted to help him? In your dreams. The two people inside the barrier each had their own thoughts on their minds, while the pitiful fellow outside the barrier who did not know the truth was enraged by Lung Ruoxue's words. Nether Sword's face darkened as he pointed at Lung Ruoxue and shouted fiercely, "Woman, I'll let you know the consequences of pissing me off. You want to fight? One-on-one or group fight?" Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked calmly, "Fighting with a woman, and you even need to gang up on her, isn't that a complete disgrace to us men?" Nether Sword said with a dark expression. "You're wrong. You should be saying that fighting with a woman is a disgrace to all men." Lung Ruoxue corrected him in a serious manner. "What, are you afraid? As long as you beg for mercy, I can let you go." Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Nether Sword's anger subsided. Instead, his tone carried a hint of teasing. "Did I say I was scared?" Lung Ruoxue retorted. "If you're not afraid, then why would you say that?" Nether Sword asked angrily. "I'm just correcting you. Since you don't want to hear it, I'll take it back. A group fight or a one-on-one fight, you choose." Lung Ruoxue was very generous. "Like I said, is there a need to gang up on a woman?" Nether Sword roared. "Did I say that you would gang up on us?" Lung Ruoxue said as she came to a sudden realization. Hearing this, Nether Sword was stunned. Did this mean that the other party wanted to gang up on him? He looked at the strength of the other party. Other than the majority of them being divine sovereigns, there were a few whose strength he could not tell. As such, he was not confident. Although he was a Ming Zun, and the one who would have the advantage in a fight with a god in the Nether prison was a Ming cultivator, he could not stand being beaten by a group of people. After some thought, Nether Sword could only confirm, "I choose a one-on-one fight." "All right then. I'll let Uncle Long fight you." Lung Ruoxue turned her body slightly and released Uncle Long, who had been rubbing his hands together and had a fierce look in his eyes. Nether Sword was dumbfounded when he realized that the person he was fighting was not the woman in front of him. Had he been tricked? He had thought that the person who wanted to fight him one-on-one was this woman. In a moment of carelessness, Nether Sword asked the question in his heart, "Aren't you the one fighting me one-on-one?" "Castellan of Jihua City, I'm only a divine emperor. Are you sure you want to fight me one-on-one? Wouldn't it be bad for your reputation if word got out? You're the lord of a city, yet you're challenging someone with the power of the Emperor of the Dead to a one-on-one fight. You're really something." Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. Nether Sword was speechless. It would not be nice if this matter was spread. No matter how thick-skinned he would drown in the saliva of others. In particular, he still had a few arch-enemies, one of whom was in the 9 capital city. He was afraid that he could not hide this matter even if he wanted to. As such, he had to be even more careful. Then let Uncle Long do it. Nether Sword agreed after hesitating for a while. Seeing that Nether Sword was a rather straightforward person, Lung Ruox's impression of him changed slightly. It seemed like this person was not without his merits. Seeing that his opponent had agreed, Uncle Long was extremely excited. He had long wanted to compete with Ming Zun of the 9 Nether prison, but he had never had the chance. Dongfang Yu and the others, who saw that Uncle Long had the chance to fight, were even more envious and jealous of him. However, Dongfang Yu and the others were staring at Nether Sword with burning eyes. They could only hope that this guy could take a beating so that they would have a chance to attack. Otherwise, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. As for Nether Sword, who didn't understand why the other party's gaze suddenly became so passionate, he had no idea that he was about to experience the most painful experience of his life. At this moment, he still had an excited expression. Therefore, it had to be said that ignorant people were the happiest. She thought of herself as a person with a rather virtuous heart. Naturally, Lung Ruoxue was unwilling to see their battle destroy the public property of this inn. After all, they still had to stay here for a few days. Chapter 25:11 Fatal Blow 1. Thus, after some thought, Lung Ruoxue decided to have the duel at the 9 capital city lords' residence. Nether Sword had no objections to this. On the contrary, he was very happy that these people in front of him had chosen the city lord's mansion, because it had now been occupied by him. It could be considered his base camp, and he also dreamed of capturing all these people there. The battlefield shifted very quickly. After Lung Ruoxue and the rest moved to the city lord's residence, the demon and Ming Zi followed suit. However, the two of them remained silent and did not alert anyone. When the battle began, both Uncle Long and Ming Jian could feel the power of their opponent, especially Ming Jian. He couldn't believe that the man in front of him had such a strong body. It should be known that when gods fought, they relied more on divine skills. That was why their bodies were much weaker than those of meditation cultivators. The advantage of meditation cultivators was in close combat. However, in this exchange, Dark Sword found that his advantage had been reduced. In desperation, he could only use dark skills as well. However, compared to Uncle Long's godly skill, the powerful dark skills that Dark Sword could use were pitifully few. In this case, he could only give up on dark skills and focus on close combat. Nether Sword had been quite depressed in this battle, and so was Uncle Long. As a beastie who had cultivated to the pinnacle of the immortal realm, there was no need to doubt the toughness of his physical body. In addition, his innate divine skill was not weak either. Against any reverent god, his advantage would be huge. Unfortunately, when he encountered meditation, he felt as if his divine skill had hit a hard bone that was hard to chew. In terms of body hardness, he had no advantage either. As such, the battle between the two of them was at a loss. It didn't take long for wounds of different degrees to appear on both of their bodies. However, Uncle Long wasn't afraid of getting injured. Seeing that his injuries were a little serious, he immediately threw a pill into his mouth. In an instant, all his injuries were healed. Seeing this, Nether Sword was so angry that he vomited blood. You even brought this? Wasn't this cheating? You're cheating. In a fit of rage, Nether Sword accused him. What? Can't I take medicinal pills to heal? Come. Let's continue. Uncle Long said with a smile. He didn't take the furious Nether Sword seriously. Of course not. You're not fair to our battle. Nether Sword roared with grief and indignation. Then, for the sake of fairness, you can also eat it. Is that okay? Uncle Long said helplessly with a pampering expression on his face, as if he was coaxing an insensible little child. However, his words made Nether Sword even more depressed. He wanted to eat it, but he had to have it. The 9 Nether prison wasn't like the divine world, where alchemists were everywhere. Where could he get so many healing pills that he could eat at any time? Even if he did, he would save it for when he was seriously injured. If he used it now, how wasteful would he be? In his eyes, Uncle Long's actions just now were a waste. The two of them were clearly not seriously injured, so why did they take medicinal pills? No, you can't take any pills. Thinking of the other party's wastrel behavior, Nether Sword, who knew how to live a good life, firmly disagreed. You don't have to eat it, but I must eat it. Uncle Long was stubborn. You don't want to fight anymore? Nether Sword was overjoyed and took the opportunity to ask. He could tell that Uncle Long was tough, so he didn't want to continue fighting with him. Thanks Uncle Long, who had also seen through his thoughts, would not let him have his way so easily. Uncle Long smiled and said, You don't have to fight, but you have to admit defeat. On what basis? Hearing this, the Nether Sword was immediately enraged. They were really bullying him. This was his territory. How embarrassing would it be to be bullied in his own territory? Just because you don't want to fight. Uncle Long's words were so righteous that it was clear that he wouldn't stop until he angered the other party to death. When the spectators saw Uncle Long's reaction, they couldn't help but cover their faces and look at Lung Ruoxue silently. In their hearts, they couldn't help but think, indeed, one is marked by one's proximity to vermilion. Looking at Uncle Long's experienced rogue expression, it was obvious that he had been influenced for a long time and was extremely dark. Slander. This was blatant slander. No matter how careful everyone was, Lung Ruoxue could see the expression on their faces that said, Uncle Long has been led astray by me. How detestable! The furious Lung Ruoxue couldn't take it anymore and jumped to the center of the arena. Seeing that she had come up, Uncle Long hurriedly chased her down and said with a protective look, Shuer, why are you up here? Get down, this is none of your business. Don't fight with me. Uncle Long, you can go and rest. Let me fight this person one-on-one. Lung Ruoxue had said the words that Uncle Long hated to hear the most. Knowing Lung Ruoxue's temper, Uncle Long didn't struggle and obediently left the room. Before he left, he had been looking at Lung Ruoxue with a face full of hidden bitterness. That expression of his was really aggrieved. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had entered the arena, Ming Zi, who had been observing the situation from the shadows, could not help but ask worriedly, Your Highness, the future Nether Empress has entered the arena. Should we appear and stop her? If you want to go, go ahead. I won't stop you. The demon said indifferently. Ugh. Hearing his lord's nonchalant tone and seeing the obvious go if you want to die expression on his face, Ming Zi finally gave up the idea of stopping him, but his heart was hanging in the air. If the future Netherworld Empress were to lose even a single hair, his lord must not vent his anger on him. But very quickly, Ming Zi realized that his worry was clearly unnecessary. This was because the future Netherworld Empress, who looked like a harmless little rabbit on the outside, had a fierce tiger living inside. No, it should be a tigress. At that moment, Nether Sword, who was in the center of the battlefield, saw the woman who had suddenly appeared in front of him. He said in a daze, What? You want to fight me one-on-one? That's right. Lung Ruoxue nodded. Didn't you just say? Nether Sword frowned. Just as he was about to return Lung Ruoxue's words to her, he was interrupted by her. With your status, of course it's embarrassing to challenge a woman who's not as strong as you, but indifferent. I'm not as strong as you, and I'm a woman, so it's not a big deal to lose. Of course, if you're afraid that you'll lose too badly, you can also refuse. Lung Ruoxue smiled evilly and taunted. Her words were definitely a direct provocation to men. If any man were to reject her, that would truly be embarrassing. As for Nether Sword, who had been tormented by Uncle Long to the point that his temper would flare up at any moment, he naturally couldn't take this provocation. You bastard! I'm scared? The Nether Sword was furious. If you're not afraid, then come. Don't waste time. Lung Ruoxue urged. Good. Since you're a woman, I'll let you have 3 moves. Nether Sword said, pretending to be graceful. Don't, I'll let you win. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to make a move. Lung Ruoxue said with a face of sincerity. Chapter 25:12, Fatal Blow, 2. However, to a man, her words were even more insulting than the provocation from before. After hearing this, the anger in Nether Sword's heart rose, and his voice became a little shrill. Damn it! What an arrogant woman, who wants you to give in. I'm doing this for your own good. Otherwise, if you can't even make one move, how can you have the face to stay in the Nine Nether prison? Lung Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes as she spoke in an extremely kind manner. This is my business. Nether Sword was so angry that he stomped his feet. Then he shouted angrily, Woman, I'll still say the same thing. I'll give you 3 moves, so hurry up and make the first move. All right. Since you insist, then I won't be unreasonable. Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. With that, she quickly gathered a trace of fiery red divine power in her hand. The divine power was red with a hint of purple. It was thinner than a strand of hair, but the temperature was frighteningly high. As soon as the divine power appeared, Uncle Long and the others immediately retreated a few steps back to safety with cautious expressions. They were not worried that Shui Er's Shen power would affect them, but the Shen power's temperature was too high. They did not want to become roasted pigs. However, the Nether Sword didn't know the truth. He didn't feel anything other than the heat. Even when the thread of fiery red divine power in Lung Ruoxue's hand floated towards him, he did not have any countermeasures. Your divine power is only this little? Nether Sword said speechlessly. This is the essence. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile and reminded him, defend well. However, Nether Sword, who was also very confident in himself, did not take Lung Ruoxue's words to heart. He was extremely unconcerned that this bit of divine power was not a threat to him at all. However, when the Shen power truly hit him, he felt an intense pain in his chest. Damn it! How was this possible? The Nether Sword was shocked. However, he quickly hid this trace of shock, and before he had time to retaliate, he immediately felt as if his body was on fire. His entire body was burning, and an intense pain that drilled into his heart and bones began. Ah! Nether Sword, who had been holding it in, finally couldn't help but roar. Ming Zi, who was secretly observing from afar, naturally did not know how much pain Ming Jian was in. What he could not understand was how that little flame could cause Ming Zun, who had thick skin and thick flesh, to cry out in pain. This was truly unbelievable. Ming Ze's heart was full of doubts, but what shocked him even more was what followed. Not long after, Nether Sword, who was rolling on the ground in pain, had flames that were half the height of a person burning on his body, which made Ming Zi extremely frightened. How did this happen? This flame naturally couldn't be the Nether Sword's own natal flame. Who asked them to be of the dark attribute? It was impossible for them to have such a thing. In that case, the flame could only belong to the future Nether Empress. However, was it possible for a small flame to pose such a huge threat? Ming Ze's face was full of disbelief. At this time, he turned to look at his lord's reaction, only to find that his lord's face was calm. He could not tell whether his lord was happy or angry. Now, he had no idea and could only continue to watch. At this moment, Nether Sword's cries of pain became softer and softer until nothing could be heard anymore. Mingzi was shocked. This guy couldn't have been burned to death, right? He felt that it was possible no matter how he thought about it. Mingzi was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Thanks Wu, poor Nether Sword. He was right to sympathize with that guy. In fact, at this moment, not only did Ming Zi sympathize with Nether Sword, but Uncle Long and the others also expressed their condolences to him. Next time, grow some eyes and don't offend women. In particular, women with powerful life flames could not be offended. Although the flame master might not be as strong as you, as long as a small spark touched you, it would be enough to take your life. Whether you could survive or not, of course, it would still depend on the mood of the flame master. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue, who had been looking innocently at the man on fire, suddenly muttered to herself sadly, "Did I hit you too hard? I didn't do it on purpose." With that, she hurriedly retracted her natal flames. At this moment, Nether Sword's entire body had turned black, and a thick layer of cocoon had formed on the surface of his body from the heat. He had also fainted. When Uncle Long and the others heard Lung Ruoxue's words, their foreheads were filled with black lines. They all thought to themselves, "Little girl, if it's a fever, then so be it. Don't pretend to be innocent. There are no outsiders here." However, how could Lung Ruoxue not show her innocence? She even deliberately stepped forward and kicked the tied-up human-shaped charcoal, asking softly, "Hey, Jihua City Lord, are you still alive? If you're still breathing, make a sound." Shui, the Castellan of Jihua City, is already unconscious, so it's no use calling him that. Uncle Long, who could not stand it anymore, could not help but remind him. It was not that he thought that Shui-er's flames could not kill Ming Zun, but he knew that Shui-er had definitely been merciful and would not burn this fellow to death. Then how about this? As soon as Leng Ruoxue finished speaking, a huge water ball appeared in her hand and she threw it at Nether Sword. Unfortunately, the Nether Sword had yet to wake up. Leng Ruoxue hung her head in dejection and disappointment. Uncle Long couldn't bear to see Shui-er disappointed, so he kindly offered a healing pill and stuffed it into the mouth of the Jihua City Lord. One had to admit that the quality of the pills Leng Ruoxue produced was guaranteed. Less than a minute after he took the pill, Nether Sword woke up. As soon as Nether Sword opened his eyes, he saw Uncle Long's familiar face while he was still in a daze. Then, he heard Uncle Long say to him very kindly, "You're awake? I just gave you a healing pill, remember to pay me for it." Money for medicine? It was only then that Nether Sword suddenly recalled what had happened. The gaze he used to look at Leng Ruoxue was filled with fear, especially when he saw that Leng Ruoxue was actually filled with joy as she walked towards him. His little heart instantly started to beat wildly. What are you doing? You're not coming over?" In an instant, Nether Sword had turned into a man from a good family who was about to be robbed by an evil person. His dark little face was pale. It was obvious that he had been scared out of his wits by Leng Ruoxue. When Leng Ruoxue heard his words, the grievance on her face deepened. "Are you afraid of me? Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. I'm only a divine emperor, what are you afraid of?" The hidden bitterness in Leng Ruoxue's tone almost made Uncle Long and the others believe her. However, the more she said this, the deeper the fear in Nether Sword's heart grew. "You bastard! You're only a divine emperor? Fortunately, you're a divine emperor. If you become a reverent god, would you still be alive?" Nether Sword muttered to himself with a face full of fear. With every step Leng Ruoxue took, he wriggled backward. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave, but the shell on his body was too hard, and he couldn't break free. "Don't dodge. I want to help you." Leng Ruoxue was disappointed to see that Nether Sword was afraid of her so quickly. Wasn't this guy the city lord of one of the top 10 major cities? Another Ming Zun, how could he not be teased? Chapter 25:13, Fatal Blow, 3. I don't need your help. I just want you to stay far away from me. Nether Sword sobbed. This woman isn't human. He had lived for so long and could be said to have seen countless women, but he had never seen a woman who made him so frightened. At this moment, no matter how beautiful Leng Ruoxue was, she was no longer his cup of tea. Such a fierce woman, which man could bear to eat her? If that wasn't courting death, then what was? And he definitely wanted to live a few more years. But our battle isn't over yet. I only used one move. You said you would let me use 3 moves. When Leng Ruoxue said this, her expression was one of grievance. But hearing this, Nether Sword wanted to cry but had no tears. My ancestors. He was already trembling with fear in one move and almost lost his little life. If he really let you finish 3 moves, he was afraid that he would be directly turned into ashes. Would he still be alive and kicking? I lost. I admit defeat, okay? I won't fight you anymore. Nether Sword said in a practical manner. What if I say no? Leng Ruoxue deliberately paused for a moment before her beautiful eyes stared at Nether Sword. What do I have to do for you to agree to me admitting defeat? Nether Sword, who was so angry that blood was stuck in his throat, said with a tearful face. He had only just discovered today that he had provoked a demon. You'll have to compensate me for the emotional damage. Leng Ruoxue wanted to rob him again. All right. Nether Sword agreed through gritted teeth. I'll go to the city lord's mansion to get it when I have the chance. Oh, and you have to give me a token. Leng Ruoxue requested. Nether Sword nodded helplessly. With a thought, he took out a black token from his storage ring. Looking at the token floating in front of her, Lung Ruoxue reached out and took it. She only took a look at the two words Jihua on it before putting it away. Witnessing all this, Nethersword's eyes were filled with reluctance. So, that token was the symbol of his status as the Lord of Jihua City. It was also the city lord's personal token, but for the sake of his life, he had no choice but to give it to this hateful woman in front of him. He hoped that this matter would not be spread out. Otherwise, his reputation would really be ruined. To Ming Jian's relief, Lung Ruoxue kept her word. After achieving her goal, she turned around and left the battlefield, dragging Ruji with her. Seeing this, Nethersword finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then he couldn't help but pray to the heavens. Don't let me have the chance to meet this woman again. At this moment, Nethersword felt another shadow appear in the sky above him. He looked up and saw an extremely handsome man appear before him, blocking his view. Let's have a fight. Seeing that Nethersword had noticed him, Dong Fengyu said with a smile. He even deliberately put on an expression that he thought he could read people. Nethersword didn't say anything. He just looked at Dong Fengyu in a daze. Although he did not know Dong Fengyu, he could feel the powerful aura from him. This man's strength was definitely not weaker than his. If it was any other time, perhaps he would still have the will to fight with her. However, after being dealt a fatal blow by Lung Ruoxue, his entire Bodhi's imposing manner was shattered by that woman. The current him only wanted to find a place to lick the sorrow in his heart. How could he still have the mood to fight? However, Dong Fengyu had already set his mind on him, so he would not let him go easily. Thanks with a wave of his hand, a strand of divine power was thrown out, and the hard cocoon on Nethersword's body shattered into pieces. He was also instantly exposed. But Nethersword was still clueless and didn't notice his own condition. As soon as he was free, he immediately jumped up and kept a safe distance from the person he thought was dangerous. Nethersword City Master, this is not good. Uncle Long couldn't help but remind him. You guys are fine like this? I said I'd fight you one-on-one, but you're all coming to challenge me. Nethersword had obviously misunderstood Uncle Long's words, and he had even criticized him arrogantly. City Lord Nethersword, since it's a one-on-one fight, why can't we challenge you? Or is it that you don't like to fight one-on-one and want us to fight in a group? Besides, you'd better put on your clothes quickly. We're all men, even if you want to seduce us, we won't be fooled. It was Dong Fengyu who was kind and made things clear. Only then did Nethersword realize that he had misunderstood Uncle Long's words. However, he did not feel any guilt. Damn it! Who was the one who caused him to be like this? Nethersword was very depressed, but he quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. However, the next second he felt a gust of cold wind. By the time he raised his head, Dong Fengyu's godly skill was already close at hand. This was a sneak attack. It definitely was. Furthermore, it was the fire attribute Shen power that he hated the most. After witnessing Lung Ruoxue's abnormal flames, he felt an instinctive fear in his heart when faced with this flame that was clearly several times larger than before. However, his reaction was still pretty good. He quickly jumped to the side and dodged the attack of the fiery divine power. However, before he could catch his breath, Dong Fengyu threw out two more divine skills. It was also a fire attribute divine skill, and they flew rapidly in the direction of the Nethersword from both sides. When Nethersword saw this, he could only quickly put up a defense. With the lesson learned from the divine Emperor Lung Ruoxue, he did not dare to let his guard down against a reverent god like Dong Fengyu. It was precisely because he was so nervous that he could only passively defend, completely forgetting to attack. Not only did he not show his advantage, but he was also being chased around the field by Dong Fengyu's godly skills like a stray dog. Seeing his reaction, the demon's face darkened, and so did Ming Zi's, because the Nethersword had really disgraced the 9 Nether prison. Actually, the reason why Nethersword had embarrassed himself so much was largely because he had been scared out of his wits by Lung Ruoxue's abnormal flames. He had developed an instinctive fear of fire. Otherwise, with his strength, he would not have been chased around by Dong Fengyu. Hence, everything was Lung Ruoxue's fault. However, Nethersword definitely didn't think about this now. The only thing on his mind was how to get rid of Dongfang Yu, this dogskin plaster. However, while his wishes were beautiful, reality was cruel. The nether sword couldn't get rid of Dongfang Yu's entanglement at all. Not only that, but the master of the Ning family and the others, who had been watching the fun, also joined in the pursuit of the nether severing sword. As a result, no matter where he ran to, he would always encounter someone who would smile and say that they wanted to fight him. In the end, he finally broke down. "Ooh, what do you want?" Nether Sword, who had always been proud and arrogant, finally asked in tears. This group of people was really too detestable and hateful. Only today did he know what it meant that there was always someone better. These guys were definitely a million times more annoying than Mingzi. At least, Mingzi would not be like them. Compared to them, Mingzi was too kind. "Mingzi, where are you?" At this moment he missed Mingzi very much. Unfortunately, Mingzi couldn't hear his inner thoughts. Even if he could, it was hard to say if he would come to save him. Chapter 25:14, Fatal Blow, 4. We just want to fight you one-on-one. Dongfang Yu said with a smile, while the others nodded in agreement. A man sweats and bleeds but doesn't shed tears. Why are you a man crying? Are you still a man? However, Uncle Long, who knew that he couldn't win the fight, criticized Nether Sword with a resentful expression when he saw him crying so hard. "I'm not a man. I'm not a man. Just don't treat me as a man and stop pestering me." Hearing this, Nether Sword shouted, "No. Today, you have to fight no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're a man or not, you have no choice." Dongfang Yu was infuriated by Nether Sword's useless words and spoke with a vicious expression. Hearing this, Nether Sword wished he could just faint. That way, he wouldn't have to face these fiendish fellows. Unfortunately, he couldn't faint even if he wanted to. At this time, he felt a weight on his shoulder again. A pair of large palms grabbed his arm and lifted him up like a little chick. "Damn it, let me go." The Nether Sword struggled with all his might, but he couldn't break free from the pair of giant hands that were as powerful as iron pliers. "Master, I've caught this guy." The one who spoke was a huge yellow dog. It was nearly 10 meters tall and had a simple and honest face. The way it looked at its master was also extremely gentle. Its master was Dongfang Yu. "Be good. Good job." Dongfang Yu praised. After saying that, Dongfang Yu turned to look at Nether Sword, who was struggling in the air, and kindly reminded him, "Don't waste your energy, you won't be able to break free." "Damn it, you deities are so despicable." Nether Sword couldn't take it anymore and cursed. Unfortunately, no one present cared. Instead, they automatically gathered together and started chatting. After an unknown amount of time, the temperature gradually rose. Nether Sword's body was unbearably hot from the sun's heat, and today's weather was especially hot. It didn't take long for Nether Sword to become a little dizzy. But just as he became dispirited, the huge khaki bear grabbed his arm and shook it violently, so much so that Nether Sword almost vomited his gastric acid. In the end, Nether Sword had no choice but to compromise. "Put me down. Wasn't it just a one-on-one fight? I'll agree to it." Nether Sword said weakly. "Ooh, today was definitely the most vexing day of his life. A demon. These demons." Dongfang Yu and the others were overjoyed to see him agree. The giant khaki bear, who had successfully completed the mission, returned to its master's beast pet dimension happily after being praised by its master. "That's a good girl. It would have been better if you had done this earlier. You wouldn't have to suffer, don't you think?" Dongfang Yu looked down at Nether Sword, who had been thrown to the ground by his pet, and sighed helplessly. Nether Sword rolled his eyes at Dongfang Yu. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "I'm only one person. Isn't it a bit inappropriate for all of you to fight me one-on-one? I don't have the physical strength to deal with so many of you. Thanks. Do you have any good ideas?" Uncle Long blinked his eyes and asked curiously, "I have a companion who is also a city lord of one of the 10 major cities. His strength is above mine and he is currently in the 9 capital city. His physical strength is good, he will definitely be able to meet your requirements." Seeing that Uncle Long had tactfully asked, Nether Sword didn't hesitate or feel guilty about betraying Netherworld Pool. This made Netherworld Pool, who was observing from a distance, so angry that he wanted to bite him to death. Damn Nether Sword. This time, their feud was really big. Ming Ze's mind turned quickly. He had already thought of thousands of ways to torture Nether Sword and made up his mind to let him try all of them if he had the chance. You bastard! She would let him know the consequences of betraying her. However, now was clearly not the time to deal with Nether Sword. Ming Ze's heart was in his throat because he was afraid that Uncle Long and the others would be tempted by Nether Sword's evil idea. Seeing Uncle Long and the others looking at each other as if they were really considering the feasibility of this matter, Ming Ze could clearly feel his heart beating faster. In just a few minutes, every second felt like a year to him. In the end, after hearing Uncle Long and the others' accurate answers, Ming Ze's worried heart finally relaxed. After thinking about it, Uncle Long and the others only said one sentence, "We prefer to challenge you." It completely cut off Nether Sword's thoughts of diverting the disaster to the east. There was no way he could make use of them. They had not expected that Ming Jian had really treated them as challengers. In fact, they had pestered Ming Jian to fight mainly because they did not like him. They also wanted to find out the difference between themselves and Ming Zun. Otherwise, they would not have wasted their time. After hearing that they preferred to challenge you, Nether Sword's face turned ashen. This time, he had completely given up and accepted this fact. Wu, demon. A group of demons. Although he thought this in his heart, he still wanted to put up a last-ditch struggle. He whispered, "I'm alone, don't forget. It's okay, we have a way for you to be in high spirits in every battle with us." Dongfang Yu said with a, "Don't worry." However, Nether Sword didn't have much hope for the credibility of his words. After accepting everyone's challenge, Nether Sword's first opponent was Dongfang Yu. In the beginning, Nether Sword just wanted to deal with it casually. However, after being provoked by Dongfang Yu, he had no choice but to defend his honor as Ming Zun and take the battle seriously. The two of them fought for hundreds of rounds, but it was still difficult to determine a winner. This fact had also ignited their fighting spirit, especially Nether Sword. After being beaten by Lung Ruoxue, he finally realized that even Reverend God-level cultivators might not have Lung Ruoxue's abnormal flames. With that, the instinctive fear of fire in his heart dissipated a lot. However, he was very afraid that this was just a trick by his opponent. As a result, even though he had used all his strength, he was unable to display his true strength. In the battle, he fought with fear and trepidation. In the end, after Dongfang Yu had adapted to his opponent's rhythm, he fought more and more smoothly and won with an absolute advantage. After the victory, Dongfang Yu threw 2 pills to Nether Sword. One was for healing, and the other was for recovering nether power and stamina. Eat it, so you can welcome your next opponent. Dongfang Yu warned. Nether Sword held the pill and looked at Dongfang Yu with a complicated expression. So this was what he meant when he said that using a powerful technique would make him full of energy in every battle? This was definitely showing off his wealth. It definitely was. Nether Sword felt extremely bitter in his heart. The people of Netherworld Prison treated every elixir as a rare treasure, but these wastrel devils actually used it in a competition. Weren't they insulting the people of Netherworld Prison in front of him? Nether Sword was filled with hatred. However, he couldn't pocketed these pills when he was faced with so many opponents who were eyeing him covetously. Otherwise, these guys would be able to beat him into a pulp with a punch from each of them. Chapter 25:15, Chicken Ribs, 1. He steeled his heart and swallowed the 2 pills. In an instant he felt his body heat up. A warm current flowed through his body, and wherever it went he felt comfortable. This feeling was too comfortable. Just like that, Nether Sword quickly faced one opponent after another. And every time his opponent finished him off, he would throw him 2 pills in the same manner. Master Ning, Dongfang Lin, and a few other Reverend God-level cultivators entered the arena one after another. Some of them defeated Nether Sword, while others fought him to a draw. In the end, a few godly venerable rank beasts and the Mother Parasol Tree were also unwilling to be left out and fought with the Nether Sword. Although he had pills to help him recover after each battle, he was also tired. Nether Sword's attitude towards the pills changed from being envious to being numb. He had discovered that these people were not only demons, but also very rich demons who didn't care about pills. Thus, his thoughts of fighting with them were completely wiped away. Enough. He really had enough. Looking at himself, who was as tired as a donkey, Nether Sword felt like crying. A sparring partner really wasn't a job for humans. Let him go. Even if there were pills, he would beat them until they vomited. Just as Nether Sword persevered and finished fighting the last challenger, he heard another request. Let's have a few rounds. Nether Sword turned around and saw the countless black masses of human heads not far away, rubbing their fists and eager to try. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Before he fainted, Nether Sword thought, "Fuck. Another divine emperor." Now, he was even more afraid of a divine emperor than a hierarch, who asked Lung Ruoxue to scare him out of his wits. However, for those who also wanted to join in the fun and fight, it would be a lie to say that they were not disappointed when they saw the opponent they had been looking forward to actually faint. This is too much bullying. It was unknown who shouted first, but the crowd, who had run out of options, swarmed forward and surrounded Nether Sword in an instant, kicking and punching him in hatred. Ming Zi, who was watching from a distance, was shocked to see this scene and his face turned pale. The next second, he immediately grabbed the evildoer's clothes and stuttered, "My lord, these people are so fierce. Do you want to stop them? Why did you stop me?" The demon blinked his eyes and pretended to be puzzled. "Because Nether Sword is your subordinate," Ming Zi said matter-of-factly. "A subordinate who has committed a mistake." The demon snorted coldly and strode towards the crowded area. Seeing this, Ming Zi immediately followed closely with a calm face. However, his eyes that were looking around revealed the tension in his heart. These gods were ruthless enough. She was not any weaker than the fiends in their netherworld prison, and the future Nether Empress would probably be even more terrifying. Ming Zi couldn't help but speculate, and the way he looked at Uncle Long and the others became more and more cautious. Seeing his fear, Uncle Long gave a kind smile and patted Ming Zi's shoulder. "Don't be afraid, we don't hit our own people." Hee. Ming Zi didn't know how to answer and could only smile foolishly. "Thanks, who's on our side?" At this moment, Lung Ruoxue's words interrupted. Uncle Long and the others raised their heads and saw Lung Ruoxue and Ruji returning. Uncle Long pointed at Ming Zi and replied, "This guy." "Oh." After Lung Ruoxue nodded her head, she sized up Ming Zi's entire body. Ming Zi was like a mistreated little wife, fidgeting restlessly. For the first time, Ming Zi realized that the future empress of the underworld gave people a lot of pressure. He was already a Ming Zun, but he couldn't stand her probing gaze, let alone others. In order not to make the future Netherworld Empress feel disgusted, Ming Zi revealed a smile that attracted thousands of people. However, in Lung Ruoxue's eyes, his smile was like a silly smile. Following that, Lung Ruoxue ignored him and changed the topic back to Nether Sword. "What should we do with this guy?" Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had finally stopped paying attention to him, Ming Zi heaved a huge sigh of relief. He tried his best to pretend to be invisible. When he heard Lung Ruoxue asking about Netherworld Sword, he even looked up at the sky as if the matter had nothing to do with him. "Killed." Uncle Long blinked and then changed the topic. "That's definitely not possible. But if he was locked up, he was afraid that this guy would escape. So, it's really a chicken rib, so difficult to handle." Uncle Long's words were a little complicated, but his heavy breathing at the beginning still scared Ming Zi. How could these people talk like this? Ming Zi felt like he was going crazy. At the same time, his consciousness said that his skills seemed to be child's play in the eyes of these people. Thinking of this, he didn't dare to make a sound. He had to try his best to lower his presence. Everyone started discussing how to deal with Nether Sword. Lung Ruoxue saw that their discussion was in full swing and could not help but pour cold water on them. "This guy doesn't seem to be our prisoner, right? How can it not be counted? Wasn't he defeated by us? And most importantly, we're enemies, and a defeated enemy is our prisoner, so we have every reason to punish him." Feng Chuan said matter-of-factly. If he didn't have such a gloating expression on his face, Leng Ruoxue would have believed him more. What a pity! This little phoenix had really gone astray. Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Demon, how do you want to deal with this guy? Leng Ruoxue turned around helplessly and asked her man, the master of the Nether Sword. As you wish. The monster clearly did not care about Nether Sword's life or death. Then let's wait for him to wake up and see how he performs before we decide how to deal with him. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. No one had any doubts. When Nether Sword slowly woke up, it was unknown how much time had passed. As soon as Nether Sword opened his eyes, he saw a sea of fire in front of him, and he was immediately shocked. Was he being sentenced to death? Was he going to roast him with fire again? Thinking of this, he immediately jumped up reflexively. When he got up, he realized that he was lying in the middle of an open space. Not far from him, there was a fire. On the fire, there was an unknown beast's meat that was roasting. So she wasn't roasting him? At this time, the fragrance of the beast meat that filled the air also uncontrollably drifted into his nose. Without thinking, he directly tore off a leg of unknown beast meat and sent it into his mouth. Miss, someone is stealing our roast meat. Suddenly, someone cried out, causing Nether Sword to immediately stop what he was doing. He vigilantly observed his surroundings, and he almost fainted again. Why were there so many people around? What was even more infuriating was that these people were all hidden in the night. If it wasn't for their sudden voice, his willpower relaxing, and his lack of concentration, he wouldn't have noticed them at all. Now, Nether Sword didn't know what to do. It was really too embarrassing, wasn't it? Chapter 25:16. Chicken Ribs. 2. Looking at the Nether Sword's bewildered expression, Leng Ruoxue stood up and walked towards him with a smile. However, the Nether Sword followed Leng Ruoxue's movements and kept retreating. It was obvious that it was afraid of her. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue could only console him. Don't be afraid, I won't do anything to you. Then stay away from me and don't come near me. Nether Sword treated Leng Ruoxue like a venomous scorpion. The fear he felt towards her only increased. In particular, Leng Ruoxue's smiling face was no longer a display of charm in his heart. Instead, it was the smile of a demon. Nether Sword's face was so red that it seemed to say, Lecher, stay away from me. Leng Ruoxue was helpless. She didn't seem to have done anything. How could he have scared Mingzun of the 9 nether prisons so badly? Wasn't he too timid? Was this guy really the brutal and bloodthirsty man Ruji had told her about? Did Ruji remember the wrong person? Otherwise, he was lying to her. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes unconsciously glanced at Ruji. Ruji revealed a bitter smile and walked forward. Nether Sword City Master, Miss Leng didn't do anything to you. Why do you look so frightened? You've embarrassed the 9 nether prison. When Ruji said this, her face was full of disappointment. At the same time, she felt a little refreshed. It must be known that Nether Sword's current appearance was definitely not common. Ruji, you still have the face to say that, you traitor of the 9 nether prison. Seeing Ruji, Nether Sword finally found a way to vent his anger. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to pin the blame on Ruji. However, Ruji didn't take it seriously and replied with a smile, It's not up to you whether I'm a traitor or not. Besides, you can't even save yourself now, and you still have the time to care about me? You'd better think about your situation. My situation? Nether Sword suddenly reacted. That's right. His current situation was far worse than Ruji's. From the looks of it, he could become her prisoner at any moment. At the thought of this, Nether Sword's mind whirred. Then he bravely looked at Leng Ruoxue and said, I want to discuss a condition with you. What? Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue was slightly taken aback. After she came to her senses, she smiled and said, What conditions do you want to negotiate with me, Lord of Jiuhua City? I'm all ears. I want you to let me go, and I'll use the 9 capital city lord and the others to exchange with you. Nether Sword said straightforwardly. You mean, we'll capture you now? Lung Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked in disbelief. You guys know what you're doing? Nether Sword gritted his teeth in anger. He wasn't stupid. Although he wasn't locked up, if he really wanted to leave, this group of people would definitely not allow it. And he couldn't beat them all by himself, so what else could he do? But compared to the city lord of 9 capital city and the others, I prefer to keep you. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. You're not afraid that my subordinates will kill the 9 capital city lord and his men in a fit of anger? The Nether Sword was about to go crazy. How could this woman be so detestable? I'm not afraid. With you on our side, they won't dare to act rashly. Lung Ruoxue said confidently. Ruji, aren't you afraid? The 9 capital city lord is your man. Seeing that he couldn't convince Lung Ruoxue, he could only turn his attention to Ruji. Unexpectedly, Ruji also didn't take it seriously. She smiled. I'll listen to Miss Lung. Nether Sword was so angry he was speechless. Thanks, alright, Jihua City Lord, don't waste your time and energy. Just attend our celebration. Lung Ruoxue smiled. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and asked, by the way, your sister and nephew are still in my hands. Do you want to see them? With that, Lung Ruoxue did not wait for the Nether Sword's response and immediately teleported the 2 of them out. Nether Sword looked at the 2 people who were tied up like dumplings and frowned. The 2 of them seemed to be in a worse state than he had imagined. At this moment, not only were the city lord's wife and young Master Cheng's clothes in tatters, their bodies were covered in wounds, and even their minds were in a daze. They were still mumbling, Demon, let us out or you will regret it. However, just as they finished shouting, Ruji raised her hand and pounced on them. After a few crisp pause sounds, the 2 finally came back to their senses. As soon as they regained their senses, they saw Nether Sword looking at them with a frown. They were overjoyed. They were saved. Big brother. Uncle. The 2 of them shouted in surprise. However, Nether Sword didn't respond. He just looked at them indifferently. Uncle, please save us and then kill all these gods. They are too evil. They dared to mess with the Grand Duke and bully the people of 9 Nether prison. There's also a peerless beauty among them, and she's also someone I'd like to offer to Uncle. Young Master Cheng continued to express his sincerity, but before he could finish, Nether Sword interrupted him. Shut up. Nether Sword Fire roared. Young Master Cheng, who had been talking excitedly, was dumbfounded when he saw this. Your uncles and nephews haven't seen each other for a long time, so let's catch up. I won't disturb you any further. Lung Ruoxue interjected with a smile on her face. Then, she brought Ruji with her and the 2 of them floated away. He watched Lung Ruoxue's back view leave, then glanced at the people who were still reveling in the surroundings. Other than sighing, Nether Sword did not know how else to react. Yet, the incompetent young Master Cheng had to create trouble at this moment. The moment he saw Lung Ruoxue, he immediately shouted at Nether Sword, Uncle, it's that woman. Take her down. Pa! Young Master Cheng, whose face was already swollen like a pig's head, was slapped again. Child Cheng was a little dumbfounded. He covered his swollen face and looked at his uncle in confusion. He didn't understand. Did he say something wrong? Young Master Cheng, who didn't really know how to read people's expressions, was so tragic that Uncle Long and the others, who were reveling in the distance, broke out in cold sweat for him. One should not be afraid of a pig-like opponent, but of pig-like relatives and teammates. One more word of nonsense and he'll kill you immediately. Nether Sword was furious. Everything had been caused by the prodigal mother and son, but they had caused him so much trouble. At this moment, the thing he regretted the most was standing up for them. Now, he was also in trouble and could not leave. Big brother, Cheng-er is your nephew, how can you say you want to kill him? At this time, the city lord's wife was dissatisfied and looked at her brother with a questioning look. Hearing this, Nether Sword almost choked on his own blood. Seeing that Nether Sword didn't speak for a long time, the city lord's wife thought that her brother had repented, so she quickly said, Brother, you scared Cheng. Quickly apologized to him. What did you just say? Nether Sword had finally calmed down, But when he heard that his piggy girl actually wanted him to apologize to his nephew, his heart was instantly stifled again. Chapter 25:17, Chicken Ribs, 3. I told you to apologize to Cheng. He's your nephew after all, and he's doing this for you, so how could you do this to him? You've really disappointed us. The city lord's wife said with dissatisfaction. Disappointed? If it wasn't for the family's honor, do you think I would care about your life and death? The nether sword was really angry. The evil fire in his heart was even stronger than before. He didn't have to worry about the 2 punching bags in front of him. Big brother, how could you say that? I'm your sister. When the city lord's wife heard this, she was even more unwilling. So what if she is a younger sister? Nether Sword snorted coldly, his cold face showing that he didn't care. Hearing Nether Sword's words, the city lord's wife finally realized that the situation had become serious. If her brother abandoned them, would they be able to keep their lives? After all these years, she had been able to show off her power in the city lord's city all because of this brother. With this thought, the city lord's wife's tone immediately softened, and she said with an aggrieved expression, Brother, what I said just now might not have been pleasant to hear. Please don't take it to heart. No matter what, we are still siblings. You won't leave us, right? What? Are you scared? Hearing that his younger sister had given in, Nether Sword continued to sneer. What should he say about this younger sister? Among his many younger sisters, she had always been the one who was the best at reading people's expressions, so when he was happy, he was willing to coax her and play with her. However, now was not the time for him to be happy, so naturally, he did not like her no matter how he looked at her. Especially since this younger sister of his had caused him to fall into such a state, he naturally did not have a good expression. Brother, you will save us. The city lord's wife asked carefully. I want tea. The 2 words that Nether Sword said made the city lord's wife and her son's hearts turn cold. He couldn't even protect himself, so how could he care about them? When the city lord's wife and son heard this, they were instantly dumbfounded. At this moment, Uncle Long walked over with a smile. All right, you guys are almost done reminiscing. We're going to lock these 2 up. Uncle Long's pass was to tie the mother and son to a giant tree. As for the Nether Sword, it was still free. The mother and son had been too agitated by the Nether Sword to react, and could only let Uncle Long tie them up. I say, Old Ming, she's your sister, so don't be so heartless. After tying up the mother and son, Uncle Long advised Nether Sword with a heavy heart. However, Nether Sword felt depressed after hearing his words. These guys were really detestable. She secretly watched the show and then advised him openly. What else could he do if he was not heartless? Save the mother and son. If he really did that, these people would beat him half to death with a kick each. He did not forget that he had many footprints on his body when he woke up. Uncle Long spoke earnestly for a long time, but when he saw that Nether Sword didn't have any reaction, he could only turn around and leave in a daze. Late at night, Uncle Long and the others all went back to their rooms to sleep. Seeing that all those people had left, Nether Sword was very surprised. Did they just leave him behind like this? I really don't know if they're too bold or if they're too confident in their own strength. Or was this their scheme? In the beginning, Nether Sword didn't dare to think of running away, afraid that he would fall into the enemy's trap. If that happened, he would regret it to death. However, after waiting for a long time, Nether Sword tried to move outside again. Seeing that no one was stopping him, he began to scurry around the courtyard. It turned out that he was still in the 9 capital city lord's mansion, and the place where he woke up was the back mountain of the mansion. It looked not only desolate but also very remote. After walking around a few times, he returned to the main courtyard of the mansion and began to look for his subordinates. Thanks, the good news was that his subordinates were all fine. They were all obediently staying in the courtyard. The moment they saw him, they all went up to him and greeted him with concern. After some small talk, Nether Sword found out that Leng Ruoxue had only requested that they were not allowed to leave the courtyard. Other than that, she had not done anything to them. With that, he was relieved. After that, Nether Sword brought his subordinates and left the 9 capital city lords' mansion under the cover of the night. After they left, Lung Ruoxue and the rest appeared at the 9 capital cities' entrance. Watching them leave, Lung Ruoxue turned to Ruji and said, "Let's go." Thus, they were also about to set off. Their destination was, of course, the city lord's mansion in Jihua City. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let Nether Sword leave so easily. Walking at the back of the group, the confused Mingzi quietly pulled a little guy who seemed to be very easy to talk to and asked, "Why did your young lady let the Nether Sword go? If we don't let him go, are we going to keep them?" A certain someone replied matter-of-factly, "Ah." When Ming Ziyi heard this answer, he was very conflicted. He had thought that he would hear some reason like, "A magnanimous adult is magnanimous." Who knew it would be this? Ming Zi was depressed. He had been silent the entire journey, but Lung Ruoxue and the others who had followed Nether Sword had a great time. When Ming Jian returned to the mayor's residence with his subordinates, he found that the place was completely silent. The busy servants were all gone, and not even the patrolling guards could be seen. This was unbelievable. It was impossible for the well-trained 9 noble palace to become like this after a few days of his absence. The Nether Sword was puzzled. After that, he walked towards his own main courtyard. After entering the main courtyard, he discovered that all of his subordinates who had disappeared from the city lord's mansion had gathered here. Immediately he shouted loudly, "What are you all doing here?" Hearing the roar, the servants and guards of the lord's mansion of Jihua City trembled and made way for him. They all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Nether Sword. "I'm back." A gentle female voice rang in Nether Sword's ears. He was startled. Why did this voice sound so familiar? Was he hearing things? At this moment, Nether Sword raised his head and looked at the center of the courtyard. Then, his eyes widened in disbelief at the beautiful woman sitting in the courtyard. "Why is this woman here?" As if he had seen a ghost, Nether Sword's heart suddenly beat faster. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he didn't know what to do. "I'm here to claim compensation for emotional damage," Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Hearing this, Nether Sword's heart skipped a beat, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Then, he looked at his head butler and found that his head was lowered the whole time. However, his body was trembling like leaves in the autumn wind, revealing his nervousness. "You guys are walking so slowly. I've visited Jihua City several times." Lung Ruoxue grumbled unhappily. In fact, they had been surrounded by danger along the way because they had been attacked by unknown forces many times. Of course, those who attacked them naturally did not have a good end. The forces of those people had also been interrogated by them. In the following days, she planned to collect mental damage fees from each family one by one. Jihua City was the first one, but it would not be the last. Chapter 25:18. In the property of the city lord's mansion? 1. Seeing that Nether Sword was only glaring at her without saying a word, Lung Ruoxue felt that she was not interested and could only continue to speak to herself. "All right, now that I've collected the compensation for the mental damage in Jihua City, we'll leave you with your token." With that, Lung Ruoxue gave a look to the people around her. They understood her meaning and protected her. The group of people swaggered out of the Jihua City lord's mansion. Seeing that the demon Lung Ruoxue had finally left, the chief steward of the Jihua City lord's mansion complained with tears and snot on his face, "City lord, those evil demons are too terrifying. Our city lord's mansion was ransacked by them." "What did you just say?" Hearing this, Nether Sword was enraged. He could not care less about his fear of Lung Ruoxue and the rest and immediately led his subordinates to chase after them. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the others had just left Jihua City. While they were discussing where to go next, they saw Nether Sword surround them with his men. "Lord of Jihua City, do you want to fight again?" Lung Ruoxue saw the situation and asked with a light smile. "Give me back the things in Jihua City, and I'll let you go." Taking a deep breath, Nether Sword gritted his teeth. What was there to be afraid of? How could it be more important than the treasures that his family had collected for many years? This was related to the development of a powerful family. If this woman really took it, How could he, the Lord of Jihua City, still have the face to live in this world? Therefore, the nether sword had chased after them with the intention of taking them down with him. Even if he died, he couldn't let these gods succeed. Little sword, don't be like this. It's not like it's anything good, so you can just collect it. At this time, Ming Zi, who had been standing in an inconspicuous position, couldn't help but speak. Hearing this familiar voice, Ming Jian couldn't help but look in the direction of the voice. As expected, he saw a helpless and sympathetic Ming Zi. He was immediately enraged. You're good, Ming Zi. You actually colluded with the people of the divine realm. You traitor! After hearing this, Ming Zi rolled his eyes helplessly and said, Can you not say that to everyone? Can you change to something fresh? Ming Zi, you and I are irreconcilable. The nether sword was very obedient, and he really changed his words. Haven't we always been irreconcilable? Ming Zi said with a puzzled face. The expression on his face was as pure as it could be. Nether sword was at a loss for words. He could only glare at Ming Zi in anger without a word. Nether sword city master, you can slowly daydream. We still have to go to other houses to collect compensation for emotional damage. I won't disturb you any longer. Seeing that Nether sword had stopped talking, Lung Ruoxue was unwilling to waste time with him. She could only take the initiative to speak. However, the moment Nether sword heard that they were leaving, he was immediately on a rampage. Just as he was about to grab Lung Ruoxue, an immense pressure descended from the sky and enveloped his body, sending him flying. The one who made the move was naturally a monster. Nether sword, who had been sent flying quite a distance, was completely stunned at the start. When he finally came back to his senses, he stuttered in fear and disbelief. Who are you? Thanks. Quickly come and greet the Lord. Ming Zi loudly reminded. Only then did Nether sword react. He rolled and crawled, trembling as he knelt in front of the demon and said, Greetings, my lord. He didn't doubt Ming Zi's words at all, because the pressure just now had made his heart palpitate. Except for his lord, no one could give him that kind of magnificent and majestic feeling. The question that he had been puzzled about seemed to have been answered. He had never known why these gods could come to the Nether prison and why they were not afraid of him, the Lord of Jihua City. Now he finally knew. Because his lord was their biggest backer. They were brought here by his lord. Thinking of this, he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he didn't do anything to these gods because of his sister and nephew's matter. Otherwise, he would be facing more than his lord's anger. However, what made him even more indignant was that Ming Zi knew about the relationship between his lord and these gods, but he didn't tell him? Otherwise, why would he anger the lord? With this thought in mind, Nether sword couldn't help but glance at Ming Zi with his fiery eyes. When Ming Zi sensed it, he smiled back disapprovingly and then looked up at the sky as if nothing had happened. In fact, he knew what Nether sword was thinking, but he didn't care. In any case, he and that fellow had always hated each other, which was a well-known fact, so he was not afraid that Nether sword would pick a fight with him. Seeing that Nether sword had annoyed his lord, Ruji also felt that her hatred had been vented. She had wanted to see the Nether sword for a long time. Greetings, my lord. Nether sword said again. Nether sword, you're quite bold. You actually dare to attack Shuer. The demon squinted his dark, starry eyes as he spoke with a slightly displeased tone. This subordinate didn't know that these gods were related to Master. Hearing this, Nether sword hurriedly explained. If you don't know, you can bully people, right? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Upon hearing the words bully, Nether sword was completely enraged. Who's the one doing this? Did he manage to bully these deities? Not only did he not bully her, but he also made himself look like a stray dog. Now, he was clearly the villain who complained first. Oh heavens! Do you still want to live? Ming Jian felt wronged. To be honest, he had thought of bullying these gods, but after the big blow, he just wanted to cut off all ties with them and never see them again. However, they came to bully him and even robbed the mansion of the Lord of Jihua City. He couldn't stand it. Nether sword truly felt that if he could pretend that nothing had happened, There was no need for him to continue being the Lord of Jihua City. That was why he chased after her regardless of the consequences, but now he regretted it. If he had known that these gods were related to his master, he would not have provoked them even if he had 100 guts. But was there any use in thinking about this now? It's useless to think about it now, it's up to his lord to deal with him. With this thought in mind, Nether Sword no longer tried to defend himself. Instead, he lowered his head and looked like he was waiting to be slaughtered. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruoxue really had no intention of punishing him. She made it seem like she was bullying him. Fortunately, that idiot Nether Sword didn't have the chance to do anything irreparable to them, so Lung Ruoxue decided not to make a fuss about it with him. However, if there was a next time, she would settle both the new and old scores with him. Of course, the reason why she let go of Nether Sword so easily was to a large extent for the sake of the demon. One should know that Ming Jian was one of the 10 major cities' castellans. His strength was undoubted. Wouldn't it be a pity if such a powerful figure was killed or locked up? Chapter 25:19. In the property of the city lord's mansion? 2. Lung Ruoxue thought of herself as a thrifty person, so she knew how to make good use of any resources. Besides, she had already robbed the Jihua city lord's mansion, which was considered revenge. If she continued to cause him trouble, this guy might do something out of anger. By then, she would be in trouble. To put it bluntly, Lung Ruoxue wanted to buy people's hearts. He would start with the Lord of Jihua City. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue shifted her gaze to the evildoer and smiled. Demon, let this guy be my bodyguard for the time being. All right. The demon nodded his head unconditionally, then glared at Nether Sword and said, From today onwards, you will stay by Xue Er's side to protect her. If she loses even a single hair, I will hold you responsible. Yes. Upon hearing this, Nether Sword hurriedly replied despite his reluctance. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief, because this meant that his lord would no longer pursue his crimes. With that, he was relieved. But in fact, he was relieved a little too early. This was because the demon was the same as Lung Ruoxue. They would only record his crimes first. If he performed well, his past crimes would naturally be written off. If he did not perform well, it would be adding to his crimes. Unfortunately, the current Nether Sword thought that he had just escaped from death and naturally didn't think of this. Lung Ruoxue was in a good mood after taking in another underling. She then passed a name list to Nether Sword. Nether Sword looked at the name list in his hand, his face full of question marks. The name list was filled with the names of some forces, and most of them were the city lords of small cities. He did not understand why Lung Ruoxue had given him this. With a smile, Lung Ruoxue took the initiative to clarify. These guys tried to rob us on our way to Jihua City, but we robbed them instead. Now, what we need to do is to collect money. You lead the way. Hearing this, Nether Sword's face was filled with black lines. He didn't expect that his first job would be to rob, and many of the names on the list were city lords of small cities under his command. What should he do? Rejected? That was absolutely impossible. If his lord knew that he didn't listen to this woman's orders, he would probably be furious again. So, the helpless Nether Sword accepted the job with tears in his eyes. When Lung Ruoxue and the rest saw this, they were elated. With Nether Sword as their helper, they could go out and play. Just like that, Nether Sword and his subordinates formed Lung Ruoxue's exclusive team to collect mental damage compensation. The team leader was naturally Nether Sword. Every day, they would run from city to city to collect mental damage compensation for Lung Ruoxue and the others, while Lung Ruoxue and the others would wait for them at a certain place. After they collected the mental damage compensation for a region, they would set off together. However, it was a pity that they could never finish collecting the money from the Nether Swords. After they had collected a batch, another batch of forces would come to ambush Lung Ruoxue and the others. The consequences would be dire. Therefore, every time Nether Sword and the others came back to pay, they would have a new target waiting for them. Just like that, a month passed. Nether Sword and the rest had almost run through the entire 9 Nether prison. Naturally, There were fewer and fewer forces that dared to have designs on Lung Ruoxue and the rest. However, the actions of Nether Sword and the rest had also attracted the attention of a few other city lords. However, Nether Sword's actions were still considered secretive, so the identity of the monster was not exposed. The organizations that had been robbed were even more tight-lipped about this matter. Just like that, even when Lung Ruoxue and the rest arrived at 9 Serenity City, the other city lords still had no idea what had happened. Thanks, however, Lung Ruoxue finally understood why so many factions came to find trouble with her when she sent Nether Sword to collect money from the factions that had attacked them. The reason could only be described in 4 words: greed and selfishness. The powers that had been robbed were selfish and hoped that they could have more brothers who were in the same boat as them. Hence, after they were robbed, they acted as if nothing had happened and kept their suffering in their stomachs. On the other hand, the powers that had not been robbed were greedy and coveted the identities of Lung Ruoxue and the others. Of course, their ending would definitely be tragic. However, it was also because of their greed that Lung Ruoxue had earned so much. When they arrived at Joyo City, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. They looked here and there. One could not blame them for being so curious. Joyo City was simply too different from other cities. If Lung Ruoxue had not known that this was Joyo City, she would have thought that they had already returned to the firmament. The quality of the people in Joyo City was obviously above that of the other cities. Even though the meditating cultivators in the city were curious about their identities, they all watched from afar. No one dared to come forward and cause trouble, except for a few people whose eyes would flash with a hint of greed from time to time. In general, Lung Ruoxue was quite satisfied with their performance. However, Lung Ruoxue also knew that the reason why the people in Joyo City behaved in such a way, other than their own strength being much stronger than those in other cities, was also because Ming Ziyi and Ming Jian were by their side. However, Lung Ruoxue's thoughts were completely different from those of Joyo City. Lung Ruoxue thought that the 2 city lords had intimidated the people here, but in reality, they were treated as the exclusive property of Joyo City Lord Manor. Who would dare to touch the property of the city lord's mansion? Wasn't that courting death? It was precisely because of this preconceived notion that Lung Ruoxue and the others were not surrounded by too many people. After walking around the city, the demon brought Lung Ruoxue and the rest to the city lord's residence. Joyo City Lord's mansion was located in the southwest of Joyo City. It occupied a large area, taking up almost 1/3 of Joyo City. This did not include the mountains around the city lord's mansion. Otherwise, the area would be even larger. When they entered the city lord's residence, Lung Ruoxue and the rest did not even have the time to take a good look at the scenery of the residence before they noticed a black mass of men in black kneeling on the ground. "Greetings, my lord." The leader of the men in black kneeled in front said. There was a slight tremble in his voice, and it was obvious that he was overly excited. Get up." The demon nodded slightly. The man in black stood up and looked at Lung Ruoxue and the rest. He bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Miss Leng." This time, they did not kneel. They had already heard from Ruji that Lung Ruoxue didn't like people kneeling before her. In addition, her identity hadn't been confirmed yet, so they naturally couldn't call her the Nether Empress. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head slightly and looked at the demon. The demon pulled Lung Ruoxue into his arms and explained, "He is the chief guard and head butler of the Joyo City Master's mansion. In the future, if you need anything, just tell him. This subordinate will obey Miss Lung's orders." Hearing his lord say this, the butler in black said with a hint in his eyes, "All right, then I won't stand on ceremony." Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. She had a pretty good impression of the head butler. After a simple meeting with his subordinates, the evildoer brought Lung Ruoxue and the rest to his main hall. Chapter 25-20. In the property of the City Lord's Mansion? 3. The main hall of the Joyo City Master's Mansion looked very ordinary from the outside. It was mainly dark gold in color and was filled with a strong domineering aura. When Lung Ruoxue first saw this hall, she looked at the demon for a long time, but she couldn't see any substantial connection between the demon and this hall. It wasn't that evildoer wasn't domineering enough, it was just that the impression he had always given her was too much of an evildoer, so she really couldn't imagine what he had been like in the past. In addition, the monster had disappeared into thin air ever since he arrived at the Joyo City Master's mansion. However, he didn't disappear completely. He just didn't appear by her side often. This fact caused Lung Ruoxue to be suspicious. After arriving at the Joyo City Lord's mansion, Song could finally move freely. The defense here was the strongest in the entire 9 Nether prison, so Azure felt that it could do whatever it wanted. However, it had still underestimated its destructive ability. After it destroyed a guest house of the Joyo City Master's residence, it immediately became the main target of surveillance for everyone in the Joyo City Master's residence. Usually, once it appeared, the guards would immediately report to Lung Ruoxue that their pet had gone missing. As a result, Azure couldn't do anything. Lung Ruoxue watched it closely, not allowing it to act rashly. After all, this was her man's property. On a certain day, Lung Ruoxue sat in the courtyard, bored to death, and chatted with Nether Sword. After she asked him countless boring questions that almost made Nether Sword break down, she suddenly asked, "Where's the demon?" "His lord has gone up." Nether Sword was about to answer reflexively, but after saying a few words, he immediately reacted and changed his words in annoyance. "I'm busy with work." "Really?" Lung Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes and asked indifferently. "Yes." Nether Sword nodded and didn't dare to say another word in case he spilled the beans. "Girl, don't listen to him. That bad guy isn't busy with work at all. He went to see another woman." At this moment, Song, who had been lying in Lung Ruoxue's arms, suddenly shouted, "Ah!" When Nether Sword heard this, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. "Someone is talking bad about you. Come back quickly." He deeply felt that he could not hold on any longer. He went to see other women? The demon has other women? The moment Lung Ruoxue heard this, her face turned black as she asked, "No, Master doesn't have any other women." Nether Sword said with a long face. "Then he really went to see another woman?" Lung Ruoxue caught on to the inappropriateness of Nether Sword's words and asked. This? Nether Sword was very worried. How was he supposed to answer this? Because his lord had really gone to see another woman, but that couldn't be considered a meeting, right? But he couldn't say this to the woman in front of him, because his lord didn't allow it. What's this? Aren't you going to tell me the truth? Lung Ruoxue raged as her beautiful eyes shot towards Nether Sword. Miss Leng, I don't have anything to explain. His lord really went out because of work. What do you want me to say? Nether Sword was on the verge of tears. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. When the demon returns, you'll tell him that you tried to molest me when he wasn't around. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. Thanks, that's right girl, just say that he also molested me. Song followed up with a roar. Hearing the threat from the man and the beast, Nether Sword even felt like dying. So, don't bully people like this, okay? His lord's nose was not his nose, and his eyes were not his eyes. If he was wronged and molested by this person again, would he have a good life? Furthermore, if he was accused of molesting Lung Ruoxue, perhaps some people would believe him. However, he would not be so thirsty that he would not even let a beastie off, right? With his brief understanding of the master and the beast, Nether Sword didn't know whether he should accept his fate or not, because he couldn't afford to offend either of them. They were really too detestable. Just as the Nether Sword was feeling sad, a melodious female voice suddenly burst into his ears. Big brother Jian, where are you? Hearing this voice, Nether Sword quivered. Why was she here? He looked at Lung Ruoxue, then at the fiery red figure that ran in from outside. Nether Sword felt his head throb. As for the red figure, it pounced into Nether Sword's arms as if there was no one around. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue only raised her brows in surprise, but tactfully remained silent. However, Ro Ji, who was standing beside her, had flames of anger in her eyes when she saw the woman in red. Lung Ruoxue could more or less guess the woman's identity. Floating Jade? Looking at this woman's appearance, she was indeed a rare beauty. Moreover, she was very suited for red. The red on her body was like a flame, making people feel her incomparable enthusiasm. More importantly, the clothes of the 9 Nether prison were mostly dark colors, usually black or gray-blue. This woman was wearing a rare red dress, so her status in the 9 Nether prison should not be low. Just as Lung Ruoxue was making her own conjectures, Nether Sword awkwardly pulled away from Piao Yao and asked, "Piao Yao, why are you here? Can't I come? Big brother brought me here." Piao Yao said unhappily, "Minga is also here?" Nether Sword was very surprised. That guy had always lived in seclusion and rarely left his main city. Why had he suddenly come to Jiuyou City? Could it be because of that? Not only that, the city lords of the 10 major cities have all arrived. Piao Yao said. This time, Nether Sword was even more surprised. However, it was obvious that he was thinking too much. The city lords of the 10 major cities did not gather here for a certain matter at all. They had heard the news of his lord's return, so they had collectively come here just to see his lord. Who would have thought that they would come up empty? Their lord wasn't even in the city lord's residence. When Piao Yao heard that their lord had brought back a woman, she specially came over to see Lung Ruoxue. She had ignored everyone else and only looked at Nether Sword on purpose. It was also an act for Lung Ruoxue to see. "Brother Jian, the city lords of the 10 major cities are all here. Aren't you going to meet them?" "What's going on?" asked Piao Yao gently when she saw that Nether Sword was rather shocked to hear that the city lords of the 10 major cities had arrived. Nether Sword was a little hesitant. His main task was to protect Lung Ruoxue. Although that valiant woman didn't need his protection at all, he couldn't neglect his duty. Moreover, he understood Piao Yao's personality too well. If he left, he really didn't know what Piao Yao would do. So, he really didn't dare to let these two women be together so easily. The Nether Sword was very conflicted. If it wasn't for Piao Yao, he wouldn't have dared to leave Lung Ruoxue for the sake of his own life. At this moment, he heard Lung Ruoxue's smile. "Big brother Jian, you should go and meet your little companions. I'll take care of myself. Isn't Ruji here?" Hearing the words, "Big brother Sword," Nether Sword immediately got goosebumps. He never knew why these 3 words sounded more and more like a death warrant. If her master knew that the future Nether Empress had called him Big Brother Sword, would she kill him in a fit of anger? Chapter 25-21. In the property of the city lord's mansion? 4. "Miss Lang, please don't call me Big Brother Sword," Ming Jian begged, trembling. He really couldn't stand it. "Then should I call you Bitch Brother?" Lung Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and asked with an innocent look. "All right." Nether Sword knew that the 3 words that came out of Lung Ruoxue's mouth had a completely different meaning from Piao Yao's. This detestable woman was clearly calling him cheap. "Do you think I can't tell?" "Slut brother sounds good, slut brother. Quickly go and do your work. It's good that I'm here to accompany Miss Lung." Ruji also drove him away with a smile. Now, Nether Sword was even more worried. Although there was a saying that 3 women made a show, there was no way these 3 women could live in peace. However, he didn't have much time to think. Uncle Long had already walked over and put his arm around Nether Sword's shoulder. "Let's go. Take us to see the other city lords of the 10 major cities." With that, Uncle Long and the others escorted Nether Sword out of the hall without waiting for him to agree. As soon as the crowd left, Piao Yao, who was originally as gentle as water, immediately turned her eyes to Lung Ruoxue and shouted, "Where did this lowly commoner come from, not kneeling upon seeing this princess?" Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes turned to Ruji. With an innocent look, she asked, "Ruji, what is this woman talking about? You're farting. Miss Lung, you don't need to pay attention to it." Ruji didn't even look at Piao Yao and directly said, "Ruji, you're so bold. You dare to offend your superior?" Hearing Ruji's words, Piao Yao said with hatred, "Insubordination? Do you think this is the 9 Mist Mansion?" Ruji laughed coldly. In the past, she might have been afraid of Piao Yao's identity. But now, if she were to be apprehensive, wouldn't she be weakening Lung Ruoxue's imposing manner? Although this isn't the 9 Mist Mansion, I'm the princess of the 9 Mist City. You're just a lowly commoner, yet you dare to be rude to me. This is insubordination. Piao Yao roared righteously. Lady Piao Yao, you can be a princess in the Nine-Mist Mansion, but there's no princess here. So you'd better behave yourself. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Ro Ji said sarcastically. Ruji, how dare you threaten me? Capture Ruji and let her be punished. Piao Yao shouted in anger. She had wanted to show Lung Ruoxue her strength, but who knew that Ruji alone would be enough to make her so angry? If she didn't let them know how powerful she was, wouldn't her title as the #1 princess and beauty of Nine Nether prison be just for show? After hearing Piao Yao's words, Ro Ji just smiled faintly and looked at her with ridicule. One should know that this was the territory of the Master of the Dark World. If anyone dared to break into the Master of the Dark World to capture someone, they would be courting death. As expected, for a long time after Piao Yao's words fell, no guard came in. Immediately, Piao Yao's face was a little embarrassed. Damn it. It was fine if she couldn't order the guards of the City Lord's mansion, but why didn't her own guards listen to her? Piao Yao was furious and shouted a few more times, "Men!" Who knew that there were still no guards who came in? When Piao Yao saw this, she was instantly enraged. Thanks without a second thought, she pulled out the whip from her waist and swung it at Ruji. After Ruji calmly dodged the black whip, it suddenly changed its direction and flew towards Lung Ruoxue. Ruji was instantly shocked. Piao Yao's whip wasn't an ordinary whip. If it really hit a person, even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. Therefore, when she saw the whip change direction, her heart was in her throat. However, before she could rush over to protect Lung Ruoxue, she saw the whip in Piao Yao's hand catch fire. After that, Piao Yao screamed again and again. The moment Lung Ruoxue saw the whip, her beautiful eyes narrowed. The weapon she hated the most was a whip, and the person she hated the most was a woman holding a whip. Hence, Lung Ruoxue could not find a reason to let this reckless woman off, especially when this woman wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She had even less reason to let her off. It was precisely because of this that Piao Yao's life was in a tragedy. And all of this happened so quickly that no one could guard against it. Not long after the tragedy happened, a black figure suddenly flew past Lung Ruoxue's side and ran to Piao Yao's side. He helped to put out the fire in a flurry. Lung Ruoxue could also feel that there were a few more people by her side. However, she didn't even turn her head. She just calmly watched a black-clothed man busy for Piao Yao. Was her fire so easily extinguished? In just a short while, Piao Yao's whip was burned to ashes and the flames began to spread from Piao Yao's arm to her body. Piao Yao had long fainted from the pain. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger, the man in black who was putting out the fire shouted anxiously, "Why aren't you guys coming over to help?" However, no one moved after hearing his words. "Mingji, Piao Yao is your little sister. Are you going to leave her in the lurch?" The man in black roared angrily. These people were really too heartless. Piao Yao was already like this, yet they still didn't lend a hand and only knew how to watch the show from the side. She asked for it. A cold male voice rang out from behind Lung Ruoxue. "Nether Sword, you're not going to help either?" Hearing Mingji's words, the black-clothed man had no choice but to raise his voice and ask about Floating Jade's other flower guardian. When Nether Sword heard this, he had mixed feelings in his heart. It was not that he did not want to help. It was just that he could not afford to offend Lung Ruoxue. That woman's flames were very powerful. Unless she was willing to retract them herself, no one would be able to extinguish them. This secret was only known to him after he had asked around. Most importantly, he knew that Lung Ruoxue wasn't an unreasonable woman. Piao Yao was most likely the cause of this incident, so it wasn't even a matter of whether he would help her or not. As the saying goes, Xie Ling still had to be a Ling person. Unless Lung Ruoxue was willing to let Piao Yao go, none of them would be able to help her. At this moment, he was filled with regret. He knew that these 3 women couldn't get along at all. Great, something had happened. However, it was a good thing that Lung Ruoxue was not the one who was in trouble. Otherwise, he would have to die to atone for his sins. Seeing that Nether Sword didn't even respond, the man in black who was busy putting out the fire immediately became angry and shouted again, "Nether Sword, you've truly disappointed me. To think that Piao Yao likes you so much? Is the person she likes me?" Nether Sword couldn't help but sneer coldly in his heart. Did he not know that the reason why Piao Yao was willing to deal with him was because he was willing to spend money on her and satisfy her vanity? Furthermore, after seeing how Leng Ruoxue and his lord interacted, he suddenly felt that everything he had done for Piao Yao in the past was too foolish and not worth it. Therefore, he no longer wanted to be a man who was at the mercy of a woman. It was as simple as that. "My mission is to protect Miss Leng." After some thought, Nether Sword said very implicitly, "What's there to protect her for? It's just the property of the City Lord's mansion, so why don't we just lock it up?" The man in black roared in exasperation. Chapter 25-22, Searching for Her Husband 1,000 Miles, 1. In the property of the City Lord's mansion? Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and turned to ask Nether Sword. No, how could you be the property of the City Lord's mansion?" Hearing this, Nether Sword was so scared that he shook his head. Ming Xing was a reckless person. How could he dare to speak to Leng Ruoxue in such a manner? Although he had heard some rumors that some people in Jiuyo City indeed felt that Leng Ruoxue was the property of the City Lord's estate, no one dared to tell Leng Ruoxue about this. Now it was all good. They could no longer hide it. Furthermore, from Leng Ruoxue's tone, Ming Xing was probably in for some bad luck. As expected, after Nether Sword's words, Leng Ruoxue stared at him with her beautiful eyes for a full 5 minutes. Although it was only a short 5 minutes, Nether Sword's shamelessness was enough to cause Leng Ruoxue to break out in cold sweat. The pressure this girl gave him was as heavy as a mountain. At this moment, he wished he could kneel down in front of this queen-like ancestor and beg her to stop staring at him. So, he was innocent, very innocent. As if she had read Ming Jian's mind, Leng Ruoxue turned her beautiful eyes to Ming Xing, who was busy extinguishing the fire, after staring at him for a long time. "You said I'm the property of the City Lord's mansion? Miss Leng, didn't I already say that you're not?" Hearing this, Nether Sword quickly expressed his opinion. Who knew that Leng Ruoxue wouldn't even give him a good look? She even said with a dark expression, "I'm not asking you." Nether Sword was depressed. He was not being trusted. "I don't have time to answer you." Ming Xing, who was busy extinguishing the flames on Piao Yao's body, said without giving her any face, "If you tell me, it'll help you put out the fire on this woman." Leng Ruoxue stated her conditions. "Put out the fire first." Ming Xing was not stupid. "All right." Leng Ruoxue's heart stirred slightly. The flames on Piao Yao's body seemed to have received an order and flew away from her. Nether Sword and the others who were watching could not help but widen their eyes in shock. This was too magical. Seeing that the fire on Piao Yao's body was finally appeased, Ming Xing quickly took out another elixir and stuffed it into Piao Yao's mouth. Then he stood up and looked at Leng Ruoxue. "You deities, since you've come to the City Lord's mansion, you're already publicly acknowledged as the property of the City Lord. Otherwise, do you think you can live so freely? You can do this because the power of the Jiuyo City Master's mansion has protected you. So, you'd better behave yourself. This is not your divine world. Anyone who dares to bully our people in the 9 Nether prisons territory will become the enemy of the entire 9 Nether prison." After he finished speaking, he didn't even give Leng Ruoxue a chance to react before he picked up Piao Yao in a carefree manner and turned to leave without any reluctance. "Who is that person?" Leng Ruoxue asked Ruji after walking in the dark. "It's the city master of 9 Nether City." Ruji said honestly. Compared to the Jiuhua City Lord, the Jiuming City Lord was Piao Yao's most loyal and die-hard protector. He never said anything to Piao Yao and helped her solve many things or people that she didn't like. In addition, he was Piao Yao's biggest financial backer. In comparison, what the Jiuhua City Lord did for Piao Yao was child's play. This was also the main reason why Ming Xing was so nervous when he saw the scene just now, but Ming Jian was not. "Thanks, So he's the greatest adulterer of the number one beauty. Lung Ruoxue came to a sudden realization. Then, her beautiful eyes glanced at Ming Jian teasingly, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. It's every woman's dream to have a man who is so loyal to her, Lung Ruoxue mumbled to herself. Upon hearing this, the city lords present did not know how to respond. This did not seem to be a problem. However, they had finally seen the true face of this young lady Lung. As expected, she was not comparable to Piao Yao. No wonder his lord had personally brought her back. Among the 10 great main cities' city lords, there were quite a few who had a good relationship with Nether Sword. Thus, he was afraid that they did not understand how important Lung Ruoxue was to his lord, so he had specially informed them of Lung Ruoxue's relationship with his lord. He did not want them to accidentally provoke that demon. However, he didn't say how terrifying Lung Ruoxue was. This was a matter of his face, so he naturally couldn't reveal it easily. However, he had also said in his words that this woman wasn't to be trifled with and told them not to provoke her. As for the rest, they could only feel it for themselves. Fortunately, most of the city lords were calm and rational. They would not be affected by Piao Yao's matter. However, Ming Xing was a huge problem. Thinking of Ming Xing, Ming Jian decided to let him have less contact with Lung Ruoxue in the future to avoid trouble. It was a pity that even though he had thought of it, things would not go according to his script. Before they could even introduce themselves to Lung Ruoxue, Ming Xing had already returned in a huff. Seeing Ming Xing's expression, Ming Jian's heart skipped a beat. Damn it! What was this bastard doing? Hand over the medicine! Ming Xing walked straight to Lung Ruoxue and extended his hand. What medicine? Lung Ruoxue blinked her eyes and pretended to be confused. A healing pill. Don't tell me you didn't tea. Ming Xing roared angrily. Although he had never been to the deity world, he had heard from the Muley city master that healing elixirs and the like were all common elixirs for deities. Hence, when he saw that Lung Ruoxue was feigning ignorance, he was even more furious. I do, but why should I give it to you? Lung Ruoxue asked in bewilderment. You injured Piao Yao, shouldn't you take out a healing pill as compensation? Ming Xing said through gritted teeth. He didn't expect such a beautiful woman to have such a vicious heart. A woman's heart was truly the most vicious. In an instant, Lung Ruoxue had become a synonym for evil in Ming Xing's heart. She was the representative of a venomous beauty. However, it was fortunate that Lung Ruoxue was still unclear of Ming Xing's thoughts. Otherwise, she would have been depressed to death. However, at this moment, Lung Ruoxue laughed after hearing Ming Xing's words. City Lord of 9 Nether City, it wasn't my intention to injure Princess Piao Yao. I was merely acting in self-defense. What a good self-defense. Then why was Piao Yao the one who was injured and not a single hair on you was injured? You're courting death. Ming Xing roared in anger. He looked at Lung Ruoxue with a burning gaze. If looks could kill, Lung Ruoxue would have been dead by now. I can only say that Princess Piao Yao's skill is inferior to hers. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. These words successfully made Ming Xing's expression turn even uglier. Following that, without giving Ming Xing a chance to speak, Lung Ruoxue changed the topic and said, It's not that you can't get the healing pill, but you have to answer a few of my questions truthfully. What's the problem? When Ming Xing saw that Lung Ruoxue had finally relented and was willing to give him healing pills, he could only suppress his anger and ask, if it wasn't for the fact that his healing elixir didn't have much effect on Piao Yao, he wouldn't have come to find this woman. However, in this situation, he had no choice but to bow his head. Chapter 25-23, Searching for her husband 1,000 miles away, 2. Ming Xing, don't trouble young Lady Leng. I have the healing pill you want. Let's go and see Piao Yao. Hearing the conversation between the two, the uneasy Nether Sword grabbed Ming Xing's shoulder and dragged him away. As soon as Nether Sword and his companion left, Ming Ji and the others also chose to leave. They had come here to meet their lord. Since their lord was not around, it was not good for them to disturb him. Moreover, if their lord knew that they had met Lung Ruoxue in private, with his protective personality, he might make things difficult for them. The city lords were all smart people, so they would not make such a low-level mistake. Therefore, they only got to know Leng Ruoxue and left without much interaction. After they left, Leng Ruoxue asked Ro Ji about the city lords. After learning that one of them was Piao's brother, Leng Ruoxue looked at Ro Ji in surprise. Seeing this, Ro Ji could only answer her question. The relationship between the siblings isn't good. Young Lady Leng, the development model of our clan in the Nine Nether prison is a little different from that of your divine realm. In your divine realm, the clansmen rely on the clan, but here, it is the exact opposite. If a clan has a city lord appointed by Jiuyo City, then that person's position in the clan will immediately become supreme, and the clan will also benefit from it. On the contrary, if a clansman makes Jiuyo City unhappy, then the clan he's from will also be implicated. This is also the main reason why many clans choose to turn a blind eye to the trouble caused by their clansmen. No family can bear this kind of loss, and in order for the family to survive in the Nine Nether prison, the competition between the families is extremely fierce. Over time, it formed a unique way of survival for the family. It can be said that his lordship has the absolute ruling position in the Nine Nether prison, and everything in the prison belongs to the Dark Lord. Ruji paused for a moment before explaining to Leng Ruoxue. I see. Leng Ruoxue nodded. She didn't expect this demon to have such means. The Nine Nether prison's territory was actually his. As for the relationship between Piao Yao and her sister, in the past, Ming Song City Master's status in the family was not high. However, by chance, he was chosen by the master and accepted as a subordinate. Later, he became the city master with his own strength. From then on, Ming Song City Master's status in the family became supreme. The clansmen who used to look down on him had to rely on his charity to show off in Nine Nether prison. Piao Yao was one of the clansmen who looked down on Ming Song City Master, and she was one of the more intense ones. It's only natural that they have a cold relationship with each other. Since they had nothing to do, Ro Ji continued to tell Leng Ruoxue about the gossip of the Minga family. If that's the case, then how can Piao Yao's days in the divine world still be so comfortable? This made Leng Ruoxue extremely curious. Of course, it's because Ming Ji is too lazy to pay attention to her. Besides, she has a beautiful face, so she will naturally be protected by some lecherous people in the Nine Nether prison. However, this has a lot to do with the fact that City Lord Ming Song has never told anyone about the grudges between the siblings. So, for the sake of City Lord Ming Song, many people are not willing to offend Piao Yao. When Ro Ji said this, her beautiful face was filled with anger. If Piao Yao hadn't taken advantage of her, she wouldn't have been so easily framed by that bitch. After hearing Ro Ji's story, Leng Ruoxue finally understood the complicated relationship between the city lords in the Netherworld prison. She couldn't help but laugh when she saw the angry look on Ro Ji's face when she talked about the floating jade gossip. However, she didn't comfort Ruji. Instead, she mysteriously arranged for Ruji to rest while she continued to sit in the courtyard, waiting for an opportunity. As for which rabbit she would be able to guard, it would depend on which rabbit was stupid. Late at night, a black-robed man who was hidden in the night carefully sneaked into Leng Ruoxue's courtyard. However, the moment he entered the courtyard, he saw Leng Ruoxue sitting in the middle of the courtyard, looking at him with a smile. He was shocked. You? Thanks, I was waiting for you. You're so slow. Leng Ruoxue answered honestly. This time, it was the black-clothed man's turn to be depressed. He wanted to come earlier, but he had to get rid of the nether sword. Moreover, if he came early, what would he do if the guards of the city lord's mansion found out? What if Leng Ruoxue found out? However, Leng Ruoxue still found out that he had arrived too late. The fact that he was waiting for him in the courtyard made the man in black feel extremely defeated. You knew I would come? The man in black couldn't believe that the other party could actually see through his thoughts and asked, unwilling to give up. I knew you would come to me for healing pills. The healing pills you have can't cure Piao Yao's injuries. Leng Ruoxue said with a look of certainty. You're right. What do I have to do for you to give me the healing pill? The man in black asked while holding back his anger. It was impossible to force the woman to hand over the pill. Therefore, he could only negotiate with her in case the other party called for help when the two sides disagreed. If that happened, he might be wanted by the guards of the entire city lord's mansion. He didn't dare to take the risk. Answer a few of my questions. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. It's only that simple? The man in black couldn't believe it. What else did you think? That's right, Piaoyao also called me a lowly commoner. This time, I'll let her off for the sake of Ming Song City Master. If there's a next time, don't blame me for being ruthless. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. However, the man in black didn't take Lung Ruoxue's words to heart. At this moment, all his thoughts were on the few questions that Lung Ruoxue wanted to ask. He didn't know what she would ask, so he really didn't have any confidence. You can ask now. The man in black said with determination. Where did your mistress go? Lung Ruoxue asked directly. When the man in black heard this question, he widened his eyes in surprise. He never thought that Lung Ruoxue would actually want to know about this. Was this question very difficult? Initially, he thought that Lung Ruoxue would ask him some tricky questions that would be difficult for him to answer. Who knew that she only wanted to know where the mistress of the dark world had gone? It seemed like the mistress of the dark world didn't tell her before she left. With this thought, the man in black was even more disdainful of Lung Ruoxue. It seemed like this woman didn't hold a high position in the Dark Lord's heart like what Nether Sword had said. In his heart, he felt that the mistress of the dark world didn't even tell her where she was, so she naturally didn't care about her. Therefore, he didn't even think about it and replied, The Lord went to the Dead Sea for an inspection. The Dead Sea? Lung Ruoxue frowned. Even though she knew where the evildoer had gone, when she heard his name, she only thought of trouble. If it wasn't for the fact that the Death Sea was in trouble, the demon wouldn't have personally come out and would not have told her about it. Could it be that the trouble there was very dangerous? Chapter 25-24, Searching for her husband 1,000 miles away, 3. In a few short seconds, Lung Ruoxue's mind was spinning. She then asked, Where is the Dead Sea? The Dead Sea is at the northernmost part of the Nine Nether prison. It has a low temperature all year round and the climate is harsh. It's not a place where people can stay at all. At the same time, there are many extremely evil and heinous wanted criminals in the Nine Nether prison. Simply put, it's quite dangerous there. Why do you want to go there? When the man in black spoke of the Dead Sea, he did not hide the disgust in his heart. As long as one was mentally sound, no one would be willing to go there. The last sentence was a provocation to Lung Ruoxue. He believed that after hearing his introduction of the Dead Sea, this woman would be scared out of her wits and would not dare to go there. Gods were food there. How can I not go to such a special place? Lung Ruoxue became even calmer when she heard the man in black's ill intentions. You really dare to go? The man in black couldn't stay calm anymore. This woman? Did this woman not want to live? If she really went there, she would definitely be like a meat bun that had been thrown at a dog and would never return. Not only would the wanted criminals hiding in the Death Sea not let her off, even the Lord of the Death Sea would want to take her for himself. That place wasn't like Joyo City, which was absolutely safe. I've grown up, but I still don't know how to write the word fear. Lung Ruoxue said confidently. Upon hearing this, even the man in black, who did not like Lung Ruoxue anymore, could not help but look up to her. This woman was too bold. Seeing that she had finally managed to intimidate Ming Xing, Lung Ruoxue continued, Prepare a map to the Death Sea for me. Also, you have to cooperate with me to leave the City Lord's mansion. Only then will you be able to get the healing elixir that you want. All right. After some thought, Ming Xing agreed. In his heart, Piaoyao's life was much more important than Lung Ruoxue's. In the following days, be it Lung Ruoxue or Ming Xing, both of them were extremely quiet. After they had finished discussing their conditions, they did not disturb each other. Lung Ruoxue simply walked around in the courtyard, while Ming Xing stayed by the unconscious Piaoyao's side. The two's behavior put Nether Sword at ease. who knew that just as Nether Sword felt at ease, he received news of Lung Ruoxue and the others' disappearance the next day. This news shocked Ming Jian so much that he couldn't react for a long time. When he finally reacted, he hurriedly went to find Ming Xing and saw that the unconscious Piao Yao had already woken up. What else did he not understand? When Piao Yao saw Nether Sword, she thought that he had come to visit her. Just as she was about to act coquettishly with him, she saw the furious Nether Sword punch at Ming Xing while shouting in an unusually angry voice, "You bastard, do you know what you've done?" At this moment, Ming Jian only thought that Ming Xing had told Lung Ruoxue about his master's whereabouts, which was why she had run away from home after searching for her husband. If he knew that Lung Ruoxue's successful escape from the heavily guarded city lord's residence was partly due to Ming Xing, he would probably be even angrier. "I only did what I should have done." Ming Xing dodged Nether Sword's fist and said matter-of-factly, "You idiot, I'm telling you, if anything happens to Lung Ruoxue, we'll all be in trouble. The Lord will not let us go, do you know that?" Nether Sword Fire roared. Thanks, he was left behind in the city lord's residence. On the surface, he was there to protect Lung Ruoxue, but in reality, he was there to monitor her and prevent her from leaving the city lord's residence. He especially forbade her from heading to the Dead Sea after finding out where his lord was. But now, Lung Ruoxue's whereabouts were unknown. He did not dare to imagine how furious his lord would be if Lung Ruoxue were to lose even a single hair. The consequences would be too terrifying. She left on her own, what does it have to do with us? Ming Xing was still disapproving. You want to tell the Lord this? Do you think His Majesty will believe you? Nether Sword roared with a face full of disappointment. At this moment, Piao Yao also understood the reason why the two of them were fighting. She knew that Lung Ruoxue and the rest had left the city lord's mansion. She could not help but feel proud in her heart. That woman really could not stay here any longer. It was good that she had left. Big Brother Jian, didn't that woman leave on her own? Why are you blaming Brother Xing? It's not Brother Xing's fault. Suppressing the joy in her heart, Piao Yao, with an expression that she couldn't bear to watch, self-righteously tried to uphold justice. You shut up. You idiot, it's all because of you, do you know that? Hearing her words, Nether Sword's anger increased instead of decreasing. As for Piao Yao, who had never been yelled at by him before, hearing that Nether Sword was actually scolding her, she immediately put on an expression of being wronged. Why are you blaming Yao Yao? Ming Xing asked, his heart aching. She's not the one who chased Lung Ruoxue away. You're really hopeless. Ming Xing's words caused Ming Jian to reveal an expression of disappointment. This idiot. If it wasn't to save Piao Yao, why would he tell Lung Ruoxue about my lord's whereabouts and let her find a chance to leave the city lord's mansion? In order to protect Lung Ruoxue, his lord had arranged for many layers of defense, especially the restriction at the door. To prevent Lung Ruoxue from leaving stealthily, his lord had even added a trace of his divine sense. The moment Lung Ruoxue touched it, his lord would immediately detect it. So, unless there was a traitor, Lung Ruoxue would not be able to escape. However, the furious Nether Sword did not expect that Ming Xing was the traitor. His relationship with Lung Ruoxue was simply too bad. However, the city lord's residence's impenetrable defense still allowed Lung Ruoxue to find an opportunity to escape. This fact made him rather depressed. He did not dare to imagine how severe the consequences would be. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but lose his rationality. In front of Ming Xing, the two of them instantly started fighting. The city lords who arrived later saw them and quickly pulled them apart. After asking about the situation, Mingji could not help but say helplessly, "They're all gone. So what's the point of you guys fighting until your heads are bleeding? Let's quickly find her. I'm already looking for it." Nether Sword said in an unpleasant tone. "Let's go out of the city and look. They shouldn't have gone far." The guards of the city lord's mansion had already searched Jiuyo City, but just in case, it was better for them to search outside the city. Actions spoke louder than words. After deciding on a strategy, Nether Sword and the rest immediately split up to look for Lung Ruoxue and the others outside Jiuyo City. Unfortunately, they were disappointed to find nothing even after they had cast a net. Even Ming Ji was surprised by this result. Those gods were not familiar with the terrain of the Nine Nether prison, so how could they have left so quickly? I've decided to head to the Dead Sea. After searching for a few days, Ming Jian suddenly told Ming Ji and the others about his decision. It had been 5 days, and not only had they not found Leng Ruoxue and the others, but there was also no news of a deity appearing in the Nine Nether prison. Ming Jian could no longer sit still. If he continued to stay here, he would definitely have a mental breakdown. When the city lords heard his words, they all widened their eyes in disbelief. Did they hear wrong? The Nether Sword actually wanted to head to the Dead Sea alone? Wouldn't that be suicide? As people from the Nine Nether prison, they knew how dangerous the Dead Sea was. Even though they were Ming venerates, it was not easy for them to be safe in the Death Sea. Chapter 25-25 Dead Sea, Here I Come 1. Looking at the determined Nether Sword, the city lords could not help but wonder if Leng Ruoxue really held an extraordinary position in their master's heart like what Nether Sword had said. The only bit of doubt in their hearts disappeared without a trace when they saw the Nether Sword's performance. "I'll go with you," Ming Ji said after thinking for a while. "I'll go too." After Ming Ji's declaration, the other castellans, except Ming Xing, also made their stand. Seeing this, Nether Sword didn't refuse, because it was indeed not very safe for him to go there alone. "I'll stay in Jiuyo City to pass on the news to you." Seeing that everyone had made their stand clear, Ming Xing could only say this. "As you wish." Nether Sword sneered. He had nothing to say about Ming Xing's stubbornness. Just like that, not long after Leng Ruoxue and the others left Jiuyo City, Nether Sword and the others also left Jiuyo City in search of her. Not only was the journey to the Dead Sea long, but the road was also not peaceful. The places they passed by were mostly remote and wet places, and there were often disgusting evil spirits. Leng Ruoxue and the rest were currently trudging through a forest that had been abandoned for a long time. In this forest, the trees had long since withered, and the entire place was filled with the stench of decay. Bones of unknown creatures could be seen everywhere. After walking a third of the way, Uncle Long and the others couldn't take it anymore. "Shui, isn't there any better place to go?" As Uncle Long walked, he asked Leng Ruoxue, who was looking at the map. They weren't afraid of encountering evil ghosts, but the environment here was really too bad. The thick and stinky smell could make them vomit out the food they had eaten 3 days ago. Moreover, they often walked in such a place, so their appetites greatly decreased. No one had the mood to eat at all. The road here is relatively short. If we go through the city, we will be discovered very quickly. So, we can only go this way. Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. She had never thought that the path she had chosen would be so difficult, yet she had to walk it. "Miss Leng, why don't we go back? The Dead Sea really isn't a place for humans to go." Seeing Leng Ruoxue's stubbornness, Ruji tried to drag her back for the umpteenth time. The moment she found out that Leng Ruoxue was heading to the Dead Sea, she was almost scared to death. Furthermore, even after listening to her talk about how terrifying the Death Sea was, Leng Ruoxue was still insistent on going. This fact made her feel helpless. Not only that, but she also had to risk her life to accompany a gentleman. Even though Leng Ruoxue had said that she would not force her if she did not want to go, could she go back alone? The answer was, of course, no, and he did not dare to. Otherwise, if his lord knew that she had escaped before the battle, she would have to give up her little life. With so many reasons added together, she had to follow Leng Ruoxue wherever she went. She would also try to persuade her from time to time. Although she could not guarantee that she would change her mind, she still had to say what she had to. Not a place for humans? Then all the more I must go and experience it. Leng Ruoxue said calmly after hearing Ruji's words. So, Ruji failed to persuade Leng Ruoxue to turn back. She was so sad that she didn't know what to say. Actually, after spending so much time with Leng Ruoxue, she knew how stubborn Leng Ruoxue could be. However, she could not help but try to persuade her. It had to be said that this was also a way of her being cheap. For example, Uncle Long and the others had never tried to persuade Lung Ruoxue not to do anything because they knew that it would be useless even if they did. Shuer was right. Thinking of this, Uncle Long and the others looked at Ruji with sympathy. Seeing everyone like this, Ruji became even more worried. So, she didn't want to turn back until she hit a wall. After dispelling Ruji's thoughts, Lung Ruoxue turned her beautiful eyes to Uncle Long and the others. She probed, "Uncle Long, why don't you guys stay in the house?" Thanks. Upon hearing this, Uncle Long exploded. "Little girl, are we that useless? You're a young lady staying outside, but you're letting us men into the house? Are you looking down on us? You're so bad. I'm just afraid that you're working too hard, so I wanted to let you out after we've crossed this forest." Hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruoxue felt wronged. If it's tough, then so be it. This place isn't like the divine world. It's better for us to accompany you outside. Otherwise, if the mistress of the dark world finds out, she might just kill us. Uncle Long said. If it was any other time, Shuer would have allowed them to enter the house. However, in such a harsh environment, to ask them to abandon Shuer and enjoy life alone, was that something that a human would do? Could it be that so many men were not as capable as a little girl? Actually, I just want to get out of the forest as soon as possible. Lung Ruoxue said honestly. At this moment, all the men were inexplicably sad and angry. It turned out that they had delayed Shuer's journey. Woo! Little girl, don't be so harsh. I've decided to burn this place down. If you guys stay outside with me, I'm afraid that the fire will spread to you guys. Lung Ruoxue explained. Shuer, this isn't an excuse for us to enter the house, is it? Uncle Long carefully confirmed. Of course not. Lung Ruoxue made a solemn promise. Let's go in. Shuer, once we're out of here, you can move us out again. Uncle Long reminded him worriedly. All right. Lung Ruoxue agreed with a smile. Then, with a thought, she moved everyone into her personal room. I want to go out, I want to go out. Suddenly, Feng Chuan's voice rang in Lung Ruoxue's mind. Stay inside obediently. Lung Ruoxue refused to let him out. Shuer, I can help you set the fire. Feng Chuan said, a little embarrassed. You're right. Lung Ruoxue thought for a while and moved Feng Chuan out. Feng Chuan, who had just come out, was as excited as a happy little bird. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruoxue was surprised. Are you satisfied with this place? I'm not satisfied. I have the urge to set this filthy place on fire. Feng Chuan was very honest. All right, I'm the same. Lung Ruoxue agreed. As soon as Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, Feng Chuan had already transformed into his true form and was floating in the air. He waved at Lung Ruoxue, get on. Feeling the scorching heat right in front of her and looking at the blazing flames on Feng Chuan's body, Lung Ruoxue hesitated. She wasn't a phoenix who could be reborn from the ashes. Wouldn't something happen if she sat on him like this? Don't be afraid, you won't be burned. Feng Chuan saw Lung Ruoxue's hesitation and kindly advised her. One must know that in the entire immortal realm, no one had ever had the chance to ride a phoenix before. Why didn't this girl dare to be the first to try? He was really disappointed. I won't do it even if it's hot. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. I promise I won't burn you, okay? Feng Chuan said with a good temper. Chapter 25-26, Dead Sea, Here I Come. 2. You said it yourself. If you burn me, I'll pluck all the feathers off your body. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. This time, it was Feng Chuan's turn to be afraid. However, it still bravely welcomed its first passenger. After Lung Ruoxue sat on it, she didn't feel hot at all. On the contrary, she felt comfortable and warm. Fenghan, you're a must in winter. Lung Ruoxue praised with a smile. Shuer, not everyone can afford to equip someone of my grade. Feng Chuan couldn't help but remind her. That's true. Let's start the fire. Lung Ruoxue did not forget about the proper business. After that, she threw out a small flame. Feng Chuan saw it and his mouth couldn't help but twitch. This flame is too small, look at it. Feng Chuan, who wanted to show off, opened his sharp beak and spat out a mouthful of Nanling Li fire. In an instant, the whole abandoned forest was set on fire. Leng Ruoxue and Feng Chuan were bystanders. They rose to the sky and looked down at the burning forest. The two's flames were very powerful, and not long after, the forest that emitted a stench was completely turned into ashes. After being purified by the flames, the environment here was obviously much better. It's a success. Feng Chuan laughed foolishly. Shuer quickly let us out. Uncle Long and the others who saw this scene from the house also said, Uncle Long, I've changed my mind. Before we reach the Dead Sea, you guys can stay in there. Leng Ruoxue said with a serious expression. What? It's so dangerous outside, how can we just stay in the house and enjoy life? Uncle Long and the others would never do such a thing. I've decided to let Feng Chuan take me to the Dead Sea. With it as a mount, it'll be much faster. Leng Ruoxue stated her reason. Then, Uncle Long and the others didn't know what to say. They didn't have the courage to go there on Feng Chuan's back. Shuer, aren't you afraid of being discovered? At this moment, Feng Chuan couldn't help but ask. Previously, someone had suggested to ride a flying beast to the Dead Sea, but Leng Ruoxue had rejected it, saying that she was afraid of being discovered by Nether Sword and the others. Why was she not afraid now? He couldn't understand. Women were really fickle. Don't be afraid. It's been so many days. It won't be easy for him to catch up to us. Leng Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly. You're right. Feng Chuan agreed. For the next few days, he would be Leng Ruoxue's flying beast. Feng Chuan's speed was indeed fast. In just a few days, he had already carried Leng Ruoxue and flew almost 2/3 of the distance. In a few more days, they would reach the Dead Sea. But along the way, they also encountered a lot of trouble. Although there were no spirit beasts in the Netherworld prison, they had nether beasts. The most obvious difference between nether beasts and spirit beasts was that nether beasts were brutal and bloodthirsty. Thanks. If the sky of the Divine Realm was the territory of the Phoenix tribe, then the sky of the Nine Nether prison was the territory of the Nether Dragons. The Nether Dragon was undeniably the #1 nether beast in the Nine Nether prison. They were brutal, bloodthirsty, and sometimes even disowned their own family in order to fight for territory. While Feng Chuan was flying with Leng Ruoxue, they had encountered several netherworms. Naturally, both sides had a big fight. The abyss dragons might look ferocious, but they worshipped the strong. As long as you could defeat them, they wouldn't care if you were a deity or a meditation cultivator. So, in just a few days, the team that only had Leng Ruoxue and Feng Chuan had expanded. Behind them, there were a few abyss dragons following them openly, and this team was still expanding. Ro Jae's mouth twitched as she saw this frightening scene from the other side of the room. She knew it. She knew it. Anything could happen around Miss Leng. If such a brutal abyss dragon had become Leng Ruoxue's follower, it would be easy to reach the Dead Sea safely. Ro Ji was a little bit anxious. However, Uncle Long and the others didn't find it strange, but they were also worried. So, the girl had grown up. Did she not need them anymore? Leng Ruoxue was completely unaware of their sorrow. At this time, she was busy looking for a place to set up a tent and cook dinner. Of course, the ones who did it were her new underlings. In order to perform well, the netherworms were eager to show their best skills. Although they were the size of small mountains, they were very agile in their work. However, they did not know how to cook. Otherwise, they would have done all the work. After the netherworms had set up their tents and eagerly helped Leng Ruoxue start a fire, Leng Ruoxue took out some food from her storage ring and slowly began to cook. Soon, the aroma of food filled the air, attracting many nether beasts nearby. However, the aura here was too strong, and no nether beast dared to come over to seek death. When the nether dragons smelled this fragrance, they felt extremely blissful. Following boss was indeed the right decision. Following boss, they could fight and they could eat. They were filled with happiness as they ate, but Uncle Long and the others in the house were burning with anger. Damn it, these hateful guys actually ate their food. Because Schwer had said that in view of the netherworm's huge appetites, the people in the house had to ask her to do it herself. She couldn't afford to do it. Uncle Long and the others were quite sad and angry about Schwer's favoritism for the new. They felt even more disappointed, especially after they had been rejected when they had strongly requested to go out and share hardships with Schwer. So, Schwer really didn't need them anymore. Uncle Long and the rest continued to worry. Lung Ruoxue, Feng Chuan, and the other abyss dragons were having a picnic outside, but they were eating very happily. What fragrant food! Can you share some with me? At this moment, a clear and cold male voice rang out. The abyss dragons immediately became alert. This person was so strong. The abyss dragons were on high alert. Their huge bodies formed a circle, protecting Lung Ruoxue and Feng Chuan. Seeing them like this, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but feel touched. These guys might look black and weren't very good-looking, but their sincere hearts towards her were genuine. The owner of the voice also saw this scene. After a slight surprise, he immediately calmed down. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue also raised her head and glanced at the owner of the voice. She was stunned. Why was it him? Mingji? Lung Ruoxue said calmly. Miss Lung, it really wasn't easy to find you. Seeing that the other party had recognized him, Minga smiled faintly. You're the only one? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. She didn't believe that this fellow was the only one who had come after her. Nethersword was a timid and stupid person. After knowing that she had left, he would definitely come to find her. No, we got separated. On the way to the Dead Sea, they had encountered a tornado that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. A few of them had been blown away by the wind. It was quite unbelievable to them, so he didn't want to go into detail. Because it was too embarrassing, wasn't it? Chapter 25-27. Dead Sea, Here I Come. 3. Then you're lucky to have met me. Lung Ruoxue remained calm and did not show any signs of guilt at the sight of Mingji. Mingji found this even more unbelievable, but he still maintained his usual smile and echoed, Yup, I think so too. Hearing Mingji's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but narrow her beautiful eyes. She didn't believe that Mingji said that because she had a good temper. On the contrary, she felt that this man was very well hidden. At least, he rarely revealed his emotions to the public. Such a man was often the most dangerous. Let's eat. Lung Ruoxue changed the subject and served Mingji a bowl of soup. After saying his thanks, Minga drank the soup gracefully and attentively. Obviously, she had exerted her full effort to divide her mind to the extreme. Seeing that the powerful man knew their boss, the nether dragons let down their guard a little and continued eating their food. But from time to time, they would steal glances at Minga, which made her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. If there had only been one netherworm, he might not have reacted much, but with so many netherworms staring at him at the same time, there was probably no one other than his lord who could remain as calm as before. And today, he had gained a lot of knowledge. At least, this was his first time dining with a netherworm. Under immense pressure, Mingji finally finished the dinner Lung Ruoxue had given him. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually breaking out in a cold sweat. Miss Lung, these abyss dragons. After hesitating for a moment, Mingji could not suppress the curiosity in his heart and asked. He did not believe that these abyss dragons had captured Lung Ruoxue. She's our boss. Without waiting for Lung Ruoxue to speak, a quick-witted abyss dragon interrupted. This answer was clearly out of Ming's expectations. Since when did the netherworm like to acknowledge a boss? Why didn't he know about it? He had originally thought that these abyss dragons were attracted by Lung Ruoxue's delicious food and had decided to protect her. However, it seemed like he was wrong. He was Lung Ruoxue's underling. However, for so many netherworms to acknowledge a boss, wasn't this a heaven-defying act? In the entire 9 nether prison, other than his lord, there was probably no one else who had the ability to make the nether dragons follow him, and not just one, but a group. There were 15 in total. This time he really did not know what to say. Seeing Ming-ji's shock, Lung Ruoxue kindly explained, "Although I defeated them, I never thought of letting them follow me. But they refused to leave, so I had no choice." Listening to Lung Ruoxue's explanation, Ming-ji was filled with grief and anger. This was clearly a way to attract hatred, wasn't it? It had to be known that many people wanted the netherworm to follow them, but that person had to be interested in them first. And you've attacked with over 10 of them at once. These netherworms are really despicable. Ming-ji wanted to look up to the sky and let out a long sigh. When he was young, he had once wanted to capture an abyss dragon as his beast pet. Unfortunately, even though he had defeated the abyss dragon, he was unable to make the abyss dragon acknowledge him as its master. Not only that, the abyss dragon that he had captured had even arrogantly self-destructed. This fact had dealt a heavy blow to him. Now that he saw the dozen or so abyss dragons in front of Lung Ruoxue acting as obedient as kittens, it would be a lie to say that he was not jealous. An abyss dragon? What a powerful combat force. If he had a netherworm, his combat power would definitely rise to another level. However, although the netherworm wasn't very intelligent and was bloodthirsty and brutal, it was also very proud and wouldn't easily recognize a master. This fact was quite a pain in the ass for Minga. Lung Ruoxue seemed to have read his mind. She hooked her finger and called Ming-ji to her as if she was calling a puppy. She asked in a low voice, "You want the netherworm?" Upon hearing this, Ming-ji's eyes lit up and she secretly praised Lung Ruoxue for being so understanding. He wanted it. What he needed was a beast with thick skin that could fly, defend, and attack. The netherworm was definitely the best all-round beast pet. "Thanks, then do you know why these netherworms are following me?" Lung Ruoxue asked with a smirk after learning Ming-ji's thoughts. "Why?" Ming-ji asked shamelessly. "Because I didn't like them at all. After I defeated them, I wanted to let them go, but they refused to leave and insisted on following me, so it became what you see." Lung Ruoxue said honestly. What she said was the truth, but in Ming-ji's ears, it sounded like she was showing off. Ming-ji became even more indignant. So, Lung Ruoxue was trying to tell him that the abyss dragon was a bitch and had the masochist physique? If he didn't want to leave and insisted on staying, then what was he doing? Wait a minute. From the expression on Lung Ruoxue's face, she didn't seem to be joking. Was she coaxing him to play? Could it be true? Minga was skeptical, but he still made up his mind to give it a try when he had the chance. The netherworms were quite attractive to him. Lung Ruoxue knew that Ming-ji did not fully believe her words, but she did not care. She liked to speak the truth. On the second day of their journey with Ming-ji, they passed by the territory of another abyss dragon. In order to protect its territory from being invaded, the abyss dragon naturally launched a fierce attack on Lung Ruoxue and the others. Ming-ji wanted to help but was stopped by Lung Ruoxue. "Watch me. I'll prove it to you with the facts." After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, she and Feng Chuan went up to the Nether Dragon's challenge. What happened next was, of course, Lung Ruoxue and Feng Chuan joining forces to defeat the Abyss Dragon. After that, it was Lung Ruoxue who wanted to chase the Abyss Dragon away. Who knew that the bashful Abyss Dragon would only struggle for a few minutes before it made up its mind to follow Lung Ruoxue. Ming-ji's jaw dropped when he saw this. He had no choice but to believe it because the Abyss Dragon was just like what Lung Ruoxue had said, it wouldn't leave even if Lung Ruoxue wanted to. This was too unbelievable. Minga was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, he had also found a way to subdue the Abyss Dragon. Over the next few days, they encountered many more Abyss Dragons. This time, it was Ming Song who took action. In the end, it was naturally Ming Song who defeated them. Following Lung Ruoxue's example, he ordered his defeated opponents to leave quickly with an arrogant, cold, and disdainful expression. When the Abyss Dragons who had lost to him heard this, they all disappeared without a trace with their tails between their legs without hesitation. This result also left Ming-ji dumbfounded. However, after a few times, he was completely infuriated. "You bastard! You can't bully people like this." Could it be that all the netherworms he had met were male, and the opposite sex repelled each other, so they didn't like him? Those netherworms are definitely all male. I need to find a female netherworm to tame. Ming Ji, who was not willing to accept his defeat, shouted angrily. Yes, you should find a female one. Lung Ruoxue tried her best to hold back her laughter as she consoled him. AI, don't waste your energy. The netherworm won't take a fancy to you. One of the netherworms couldn't stand it anymore, so it had to tell the truth. But I am Ming Zun. Hearing the netherworm's honest words, Ming Ji was filled with grief and indignation. This has nothing to do with strength. We do worship the strong, but your affinity is not enough. The Abyss Dragon said with a look of sympathy. Although they had also lost, they felt very close to their boss. As for the meditation cultivators, even if they were stronger than them, they didn't like them at all. Chapter 25-28, Dead Sea, Here I Come. For this was the difference. This is not fair. This is not fair. Ming Ji was heartbroken. Lung Ruoxue didn't know how to comfort him when she saw his heartbroken look. In fact, if the affinity was not enough, she could still force it to recognize her as its master. However, she was not willing to treat cute beasties that way, so she could only keep these words to herself. However, the nether dragons did not care about fairness. After all, there were no beast tamers in the 9 nether prison. Thus, they were not afraid that someone would go against their will and force them to acknowledge a master. If he couldn't beat his opponent, he could just self-destruct. It could be said that the beasts of the netherworld prison were not only stubborn, but also had a violent temper. Self-destruction was even easier than eating and sleeping for them, so they didn't think it was a difficult thing. It was because he knew their nature that Ming Ji was even more depressed. For the next few days, he was so depressed that he didn't say a word. This situation continued until the Death Sea. Swear, the Dead Sea should be just ahead. Feng Chuan said, looking at the map. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head. The closer they got to the Dead Sea, the more she could feel the temperature drop. When she saw the gates of the Dead Sea, she could not help but feel a little confused. The Dead Sea? Who could tell her how the Dead Sea had become the Dead Sea City? Where was the sea? Where was the sea? Lung Ruoxue felt that she had been tricked. She did not see the sea at all, or had they gone the wrong way and come to the wrong place? This is the Dead Sea? Lung Ruoxue asked, speechless. The map shows it, and so do the 2 words on the city gate. Feng Chuan said honestly. After hearing Feng Chuan's words, Lung Ruoxue turned to look at the Abyss Dragon behind her. The largest Abyss Dragon quickly nodded. Boss, this is the place. Where is the sea? Lung Ruoxue could not help but ask. I'm underground in this city. Minga, who had gradually recovered from the shock, replied. We're not in the wrong place? Lung Ruoxue asked, unwilling to give up. No, I didn't. This is the Dead Sea. After we enter, everyone must be careful. Ming Ji looked at Lung Ruoxue deeply as she reminded her. Thanks, he knew that even if the heavens rained down daggers on him, he would no longer be able to stop this woman. Hence, he gave up on wasting his breath on Lung Ruoxue and prepared to risk his life to accompany her. She looked at the majestic number of netherworms behind her, then at Ming Ji. Lung Ruoxue actually wanted to say, move all of you into the house. She could go in by herself. However, she knew that if she said that, Ming Ji would probably fly into a rage. Since he had suffered quite a lot along the way, Lung Ruoxue decided not to provoke him. But after some thought, she still moved the huge netherworms in. There was no helping it, they were too conspicuous. Seeing that the netherworms had suddenly disappeared, Minga asked in surprise, what about the netherworms? I've kept it. Lung Ruoxue's reply was as if it was a matter of course. Hearing this, Ming Ji almost vomited blood. How could he put it away? At this moment, the netherworms that had been moved into the house also exploded. Boss, quickly let us out. We still have to protect you. The Abyss Dragons scurried around the courtyard in a frenzy, their deafening roars causing Uncle Dragon and the others' eardrums to hurt. In the end, Lung Ruoxue ignored their request, while Uncle Dragon and the others could not take it anymore and gave them a good beating. After that, the aggrieved abyss dragons became obedient. These people are so cruel. They were so scared. Boss help. The abyss dragons were roaring and shouting in their hearts, but when Uncle Dragon and the others glared at them fiercely, they immediately lowered their heads like little wives. Next, it was Uncle Dragon and the others turned to shout loudly, "Shwe, move us out. Uncle Long, be good and stay in the house. It's not suitable for too many people to move around together." Lung Ruaksha's gentle and comforting voice reverberated throughout the courtyard. The moment they heard her words, no matter if it was a human or a beast, all of them were depressed. After settling Uncle Dragon and the netherworms, Lung Ruashue turned to Mingji with a faint smile. "Let's go in." "All right." Minga was helpless, but he also knew that the woman in front of him was not as weak as she looked. On the contrary, she was a big beast in the coat of a little white rabbit. Minga had seen this from her previous battle with the netherworms. "The Dead Sea. I'm coming," Lung Ruashue said excitedly. Then she ordered Feng Chuan to land and the three of them walked towards the gate of the Dead Sea. When they arrived at the entrance of the Dead Sea City, they paid the entrance fee as per usual. Under the surprised gazes of the city guards, the three of them walked into the Dead Sea City. By the way, what did the guards give us? The moment they entered the city, Lung Ruashue looked at the dark green leaf in her hand and asked curiously. They had paid the entrance fee, yet they had received a leaf. What was going on? "This leaf can protect our identity in the Dead Sea City for 3 times. After 3 times, it's up to us whether we live or die. Furthermore, we have paid the entrance fee to enter the city openly. If we sneak in without paying the entrance fee, we are considered unregistered citizens. Once we are discovered, we will be wanted by the entire Dead Sea City. At that time, anyone will have the right to kill an unregistered citizen." Minga explained. "Then Uncle Long and the others won't be able to come out?" Lung Ruashue couldn't help but ask. If that really happened, she would feel guilty. Originally, she had planned to let Uncle Long and the others out for some fresh air after they had settled down in the city. Now it seemed that it would be dangerous to let Uncle Long and the others out. Chapter 25-29, The God of Slaughter Descends, 1. It's not impossible to come out as long as you are prepared to be hunted down by the entire Dead Sea. Mingji said, gloating. Uncle Long and the others in the house naturally heard his words clearly, so as soon as he finished speaking, Uncle Long and the others immediately protested, "We're not afraid of being hunted down. We want to get out. I must. We also want it. Boss, let us out." Seeing Uncle Dragon and the others making a ruckus, the netherworms also roared, unwilling to be outdone. The series of roars and shouts caused Lung Ruaksha's eardrums to ring. She had no choice but to cut off the connection with the house. Then she calmly said, "I will consider your opinion. Let's go." Hearing Lung Ruaksha's words, it was Mingji's turn to be dumbfounded. Alright. He had to admit that he had intentionally not told Lung Ruashue about this before he came in. His motive was to see how Lung Ruashue would react when she heard about this. Would she be afraid or panic? Unfortunately, to his disappointment, the other party was neither afraid nor panicked. Instead, he was still calm. Lung Ruashue was calm, but Mingji was not. He regretted his momentary curiosity. If something happened to this little girl in the Dead Sea, how was he going to explain it to his lord? Wouldn't his lord peel off his skin? Even though he had some confidence in protecting this little girl as long as he did not encounter the master of the Dead Sea, based on his understanding of Lung Ruashue, this little girl was definitely not someone who would stay put. If he did not take care of any of them, the consequences would be unimaginable. Seeing Mingji's hesitation, Lung Ruashue smiled and said, "What? Are you afraid?" A provocation. This was definitely a direct provocation. He should be the one who said that, right? Why was it a little girl's turn to ask him? Minga felt as if her self-esteem had been deeply hurt. Ooh, this girl looks so weak and fragile, but why is she so uncute? Regret. Minga was filled with regret. Why did he have to meet Lung Ruoxue when he was separated from his teammates? If he had not met her, or if he had only met her in the Dead Sea, he would not have suffered so many blows along the way. Ever since Ming-Ji had met Lung Ruoxue, he had suffered more blows than he had ever experienced in his life. He felt that he should protect the future Netherworld Empress, but after spending a few days with her, he realized helplessly that she was so tough that she didn't need his protection at all. Whether it was the powerful and thick-skinned netherworms, the nauseating evil ghosts, or the natives of the Nether prison, she was able to handle them with ease. If they did not attack, she would not take the initiative to provoke them. If they attacked, they would definitely be the unlucky ones. This was the experience he had gained along the way. And regardless of the other party's strength, she wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. Thinking of Lung Ruoxue's fearsome flames, Ming-Ji's little heart could not help but tremble. This little girl was definitely the Chu Qiao of the fierce tigress. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. When they first heard that this little girl had gone missing, they were extremely worried. They were afraid that she would be in danger. Now that they had been in contact with her for a few days, Ming-Ji truly felt that the person they should be worried about should not be Lung Ruoxue, but the unlucky creatures in the 9th Nether prison. More importantly, this was the first time he felt that strength really didn't mean everything. Thanks when he thought of this, he forced himself to calm down and said as if nothing had happened, "Yup. If you're afraid, please ask for protection." Lung Ruoxue did not expect Ming-Ji, who looked so serious and had the air of a master, to be so thick-skinned as to say such shameless words. After being stunned for a moment, she revealed a smile that could cause the downfall of a city and a nation and said, "No problem, you'll have meat to eat if you follow me. Then I'll have to ask boss to protect me in the future." In his amazement, Mingus seized the opportunity and did not hold back at all. But then, he couldn't help but remind, "Boss, can you not laugh so flirtatiously? It'll cause trouble." Flirtatious? Lung Ruoxue almost exploded. She wasn't smiling coquettishly. That was clearly a smile, all right? It was a smile. However, what Ming-Ji said was true. While she was talking to Ming-Ji, Lung Ruoxue could already feel countless burning gazes on her. "What do we do now?" Lung Ruoxue asked Ming-Ji's local tyrant. "It's good to be calm. They want Dare to come and find trouble easily." Ming-Ji said confidently. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Lung Ruoxue's ability to attract trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them were immediately surrounded. They were surrounded by tall and fierce-looking burly men. These people had a terrifying smell of blood on them. One look and you could tell that they were masters of blood. The way they looked at Lung Ruoxue was filled with lust and evil. It was as if Lung Ruoxue was completely naked in front of them and had nowhere to hide. Facing these gazes, Lung Ruoxue became increasingly calm. On the other hand, Ming-Ji furrowed his brows and released his Ming-Zun's pressure. Who knew that these fiendish fanatics did not care at all? Their burning hot eyes were still fixed on Lung Ruoxue, and some of them were even drooling. Get lost. Mingo was furious, and the consequences were severe. At this time, a boorish man who looked like the leader of these people, with a wretched smile on his lips, said to Ming-Ji with a smile, "This brother, don't be angry. Since we've come to the Dead Sea, we should share our troubles and blessings. If there's a woman, we can play with her too. When you're done playing with her, you can let us play with her too." The slightly ugly man had a good eye. He could tell that Ming Song was more powerful than him, so he naturally did not want to fight her head-on. However, he was not afraid of Ming Song, because in the Dead Sea, strength did not speak for itself. What they looked at was the faction that she belonged to, and the factions here had always been deeply rooted. They were the local tyrants, and as local tyrants, there was no reason for them to be afraid of 3 new wanderers, especially among the 3. 2 of them had especially rich spirit chi, so of course they couldn't let them go. After hearing the man's words, Minga almost exploded in anger. These guys were really looking for death. However, he also knew why these people were so arrogant. They were acting this way because the master of the Dead Sea was backing them up. Hence, they did not even care about him, Ming Zun. The furious Ming Ji had intended to teach these people a lesson and at the same time, intimidate the others. Who knew that before he could do anything, he heard Lung Ruox's grinning voice. Don't wait until he's tired of playing with me. He'll play with you guys now. Ah. After hearing this, Minga was at a loss. Should he sympathize with these guys who had taken the initiative to die? Even though Lung Ruoxue had a smile on her face, he knew that this girl was furious. However, it's good to let her vent her anger. As for me, I'll just wait for help at any time. With this thought in mind, Ming Ji put on the posture of a master, allowing Lung Ruoxue to do whatever she wanted. Chapter 25-30, The God of Slaughter Descends, 2. Hee. This girl was still the most understanding. Since you're taking the initiative, this grandpa won't be polite. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue was so tactful, the local bully naturally wouldn't reject her. Can I join too? Feng Chuan didn't want to be ignored, so he interrupted. All right. The local bully sized up Feng Chuan who had spoken. Seeing that Feng Chuan's skin was as soft and tender as a pretty boy's, he was also overjoyed. Not only did he like women, but he also liked men. Therefore, he naturally could not bear to let go of such a high-quality woman. Of the 3 people in front of him, other than the one with the strongest strength, the other 2 were very much to his liking. The local snake boy was quite satisfied with his romantic encounter. As for his subordinates, they were already drooling. Top grade. It's really of the highest quality. They had been hiding in this godforsaken place, and this place was filled with tough-skinned men. They couldn't find anyone to have fun with even if they wanted to. But now, there were 2 top-grade forbidden tortoises, and they were cooperating with each other. Of course, they were happy. Boss, quickly bring them to our territory. We'll be robbed if we stay here. Seeing that their boss was completely immersed in the beauty and unable to extricate himself, a man with wretched small eyes reminded him in a low voice. Right. That made sense. 2 beauties, quickly come home with me. I'll definitely take good care of you. The local snake boy said happily. He felt that these 3 people were afraid of his power, and completely did not realize that their joy was about to turn into sorrow. Lung Ruoxue thought that she could take care of these people here, but when she saw that this disgusting idiot actually dared to bring her home, she nodded in satisfaction and said, Then well, thank you in advance. Lead the way. The snake boy's smile widened when he heard that. Meanwhile, Mingji, who had been watching coldly from the side, felt a surge of sympathy for him. This guy had definitely invited a wolf into his house. Great, now that we're in their lair, it'll be easier to deal with them. It was just nice to wipe them out in one go. Unfortunately, not only did the local snake boy not realize the impending danger, he was so beautiful that his tail was about to rise to the sky. He ordered his men to bring the 2 beauties he had taken a fancy to, as well as Mingji, who was a burden to him, back to his lair. Although the force that this local thug belonged to was one of the strongest in the Dead Sea, it was not the strongest. He was afraid that a long delay would bring more trouble. After he brought Lung Ruoxue, Feng Chuan, and Mingji back, he could not wait to enjoy them first. Of course, his only targets were Lung Ruoxue and Feng Chuan. He would never dare to have any ideas about Mingji. Seeing that he was going to exclude Mingji, Lung Ruoxue was not going to let it go. Lung Ruoxue deliberately pouted her pink and tender lips and said in a gentle voice, You don't like him? This guy's face is pretty. As soon as Minga heard that it was her, black lines immediately appeared on her forehead. What was this little girl up to? He knew that his looks were passable, but he didn't have any fetishes for men. However, in order to cooperate with Lung Ruoxue, he remained expressionless. When the local snake boy heard Lung Ruoxue's coquettish tone, his body went limp. He looked at Mingji, and then caught a glimpse of the disdain in Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes. His brain heated up, and he said with pride, Then let him stay here to serve you. Serve your ancestors. Hearing the snake boy's words, Minga couldn't help but curse in her heart. However, she still showed no expression on her face. Her behavior was taken as shyness by the snake boy, and his self-confidence swelled in an instant. He knew it. He was such a strong man, how could anyone reject him? The overjoyed local thug hurriedly brought Lung Ruoxue and the other two into the room and began to undress impatiently. Thanks, Ugh. Seeing him like this, Feng Chuan really wanted to tell him not to take off his clothes, just come directly. However, Ming Ji's face darkened when he saw the snakeman's actions. He had never thought that someone would actually dare to plot against him. How serious was this guy's sperm problem? When the local snake boy was left with only a piece of cloth, he turned around and asked Lung Ruoxue and the other two, "Who's going to let me go first?" "Let's go together." The three of them said in unison. "Together? Good. I like the heavy taste." When the snake boy heard this, his eyes flashed with lust, as bright as the sun. It was clear that he liked this idea very, very much. However, before he could enjoy himself enough, Feng Chuan took the lead and kicked the local snake boy who was close to him onto the bed. Feng Chuan's kick was definitely not light, but they didn't hear the local snakeman cry out in pain as they had hoped. Instead, they heard a thump, comfortable. These words instantly caused Lung Ruoxue and the other two's faces to turn black. Feng Chuan jumped onto the bed in anger and started kicking and punching the snake boy. But the harder he kicked, the more excited the snake boy became. Comfortable. It was so comfortable. I didn't expect you to be into this. I really like it. Use more strength. You bastard. Use a little more strength, will you? Feng Chuan was even angrier. He directly spat out a mouthful of Nanling Li fire, burning the snake man's body. Who knew that by doing this, the snake man's screams became even more perverted. Arg. I like you so much. I've decided you'll be my #1 male pet from now on. The local tyrant quickly established Feng Chuan's supreme position as a male pet in the fight with Feng Chuan. Hearing this, Feng Chuan wanted to kneel down. It seemed that he was still too innocent and not suitable to deal with this kind of shameless guy. After that, Feng Chuan jumped away from the guy who was still burning with flames with a defeated look on his face. He was really convinced. Seeing Feng Chuan's dejected look, Lung Ruoxue raised her eyebrows and looked at Ming Ji. Her meaning was clear. You go. Minga hesitated for a moment, then said with some difficulty, "This? I give up." He was also a person who only knew how to use his fists to speak. If he were to really make a move, wouldn't it benefit that guy who was not afraid of the heat and was screaming happily even when his body was on fire? He wouldn't do something that would make him suffer a loss. "Swear, I'll leave it to you," Feng Chuan said with an expression as if he was entrusting her with an important task. "Okay, I'll leave it to you." Minga immediately agreed. "AI. With two big men here, you still have to let me, a weak woman, make a move. The world is really degenerating day by day. Why are men so useless?" Glancing at the two of them, Lung Ruoxue sighed with emotion. Ming Ji and Feng Chuan's foreheads were filled with black lines as they started to break out in cold sweat. They could tell that if Lung Ruoxue were to make a move, they would have to bear the burden of the current crime of men being useless. However, looking at the snakehead man who was still shouting happily on the bed, the two of them revealed an expression of going all out and looked at Lung Ruoxue with anticipation. Seeing that the two of them had made up their minds, Lung Ruoxue smiled and walked towards the bed. She looked at the snake boy whose body was already on fire and could not help but sigh. The people of the Nine Nether prison are indeed thick-skinned. If the Phoenix clan's southern spirit Lee fire were to burn a person from the immortal realm, he would have been burned to death long ago. However, this person in front of him was actually still alive. This was truly too inconceivable. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.